Ladies and gentlemen, filmmakers and moviegoers alike, welcome to this week's episode of Critic Casual, where I forgot to unmute my mic. I'm Srekcuf5.
Adventure!
Oh.
It wasn't worth the pain, but I'm here.
Hi, Dev. Welcome back. I was about to say, you hurt yourself, and you run in on an intro. That wasn't worth it.
It was in the bit, though.
I can appreciate
I love that my headset's actually loud enough that I could hear you from all the way over there.
me and my mistake. You bag of ice already. I like it.
I've had it already for a while.
Okay, so we're here. Do you have anything you want to say before we start talking about this week and this week's movies?
Not before the movies are involved, at least.
Okay. I'm prepared for us to argue.
Oh, without a doubt, this week is gonna have arguments. Straight up, based off of us watching the first one together.
Like, some of it's going to be arguments, some of it's going to be us agreeing with each other.
Oh yeah, no, I expect that to be exactly how this goes. And I expect at the end of the day, our ratings are gonna be so goddamn stupidly close.
It's going to be annoying. It's like, why do we have such different opinions? It's a 6. All right. So let's start talking about this week's movies. This week, it's The Hobbit.
That's how it always goes.
So this week's movies, it's the Hobbit trilogy. We've watched all 3 of the Hobbit movies. We put the books together like they should have been all along.
Yep.
And, we're here. We're watching. So, I think the way we're going to do it, too, is we're just going to briefly recap movies 1, 2, and 3 without spoilers, give each one of them our ratings real fast, and then we'll hop into spoilers over all 3 together.
Yes.
Okay.
I do have something special for this review.
Okay.
Well, what do you have? What do you have with you right now that I saw?
Oh, me? Dinner.
Not that, the other thing.
My notes. My notes. Yeah. You have notes, too?
I have notes this week. You want to know what caused this?
Mm-hmm. I would love to know.
At least in the extended edition of the Desolation of Smog, there is a Wilhelm scream that literally caused me to go, you know what? I'm taking fucking notes. And you know exactly what Wilhelm it is.
I think I do, yes.
But it happened, and I'm like, I can't not write this down to remember because it's so egregious. Even if it's an added scene, why do it like that to that? And it just, there's so much wrong with it.
I just think at this point, anyone who uses a Wilhelm scream, like, it's so, everyone knows that sound.
Oh no. And I'm okay with a random person in a battle being the Wilhelm, right?
To me, it's too much of it. Like, if you use it in general,
I find it like if it's used in that scenario, I find it like it's a funny call. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a little jest that if you know that call because you've seen so many movies, you're like, that's the Wilhelm scream. You know it. You'll love it because that goon just got Wilhelmed. Not what happens in this. Because that also, Desolation of Smog at least has 2 Wilhelms in it, which makes it worse.
There were, I remember it being like, what? Okay. So, before we start talking about Desolation of Smog, let's start talking about our first movie, okay?
Yes. I did not go back to do notes for that one, I will fully admit.
It's okay.
Because I was like, you know what? I already have 4 pages of notes. I don't need 4 more. And honestly, it's the one that I have the least issues with. So, putting that up front as well.
Okay. So let's start from the beginning.
The unexpected journey.
Yes. So, we're talking about the unexpected journey. My immediate thought. This movie starts with Bilbo and, like, his story, and we have him starting to write down his tale, and we get to see a young...
Not without a egregious Elijah Wood cameo, and this intro taking about fucking 15 minutes.
Yes, I wrote it in my notes. 14-minute intro before we get into why we are watching the movie. So it takes 14 minutes of just expositing.
Expositing?
Yes.
Alright, I'm fine with that being our word for it. Put it on a shirt.
Yep. Expediting. But
Exposizing?
yes, whatever the hell, I can't tongue tie. So, after that, my immediate question is, are we actually getting the story of the Hobbit? Or are we getting the story of the Hobbit told by Bilbo Baggins? First question.
I would say neither.
Okay. And we can get into that a little bit more in the spoilers if you can't get into real spoilers.
But there's stuff that that's told in this that Bilbo wouldn't know, but also isn't in what would be known as the Hobbit book, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So I would say neither. Because the big thing that this should have been is what's it called again? The Silmarillion? Silmarillion. This should have been the Silmarillion, the Hobbit's tale.
That could have worked.
Because it's a mixture of both. That's the issue I have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also, me and my dad talked about this a few times. When he first saw this movie, he was like, I hate this.
Okay.
Because that was one of the things he grew up reading us was The Hobbit.
Yeah.
And he's like, if you want a Silmarillion movie, make a Silmarillion movie. If you want a Hobbit movie, just make it the Hobbit movie. Because there's a lot of the Silmarillion in this trilogy. It's not in this one that much. I will say that. It's minimal. They add the Brown Wizard. And that's kind of the only major thing that gets added Silmarillion-wise that's not... And the White Orc.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of the only things that are added from extended lore into this. But I do feel weird about the White Orc because a lot of it feels like it's just like Shadow of Mordor rival system.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's that is how I've always looked at that character throughout this arc. It's like, oh man, that feels a lot like that fucking...
Dude, I hate, speaking of which, I remember my rival that I had, he killed me 6 or 7 times before I managed to kill him. And it was...
How much shit did he talk to you every time?
So much shit. I don't know.
Deservedly, if you've died 6 times to him, but...
I don't know what I was doing wrong either, because after I ignored him for 1 or 2 fights, I killed him the next time. And then when he came back later on in the game to do his nemesis-y stuff, spoilers for the game, he was a piece of cake, and I was like, what the hell?
See, I hate bosses like that. That was like with God of War.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Cerberus thing in the first one that I couldn't beat. And I didn't touch the game for almost a year. Came back, and my friend's like, dude, you could beat it. Just try again. I'm like, no, I can't beat that stupid fight. 5 minutes flat. I'm like, how did I have difficulty with this a year ago? I haven't touched this game in a year. What?
That's silly. But true. And then, getting back on track.
Yes.
Real fast. So, that was just my first thought when the movie started. Was, are we getting an actual Hobbit story, or are we getting a story told by Bilbo Baggins? And then, as we get through, some of the things I kind of enjoy. Like, they have interesting transitions from young to old versions. I love the coordination of the dwarves that we get to see as they get to, the camaraderie and stuff. I do like the characteristics that we do get to see of the dwarves that we have. And how the ones that we do actually get to know personalities for, we actually get to understand who they are, they actually kind of keep to their character.
Yeah, it's just the problem with that is, and this might seem blasphemous coming from me, as someone who loves the book growing up.
Mm-hmm. I'm here.
Uh-oh.
I don't know why my camera failed. Hello? Hello? This is a new problem.
What is happening?
I don't know.
If you can hear
I can hear you.
me.
Hi, Dev. I can hear you.
Hi.
I don't know what's going on.
Your camera.
It's more than the camera. It's Discord as a whole. Leave the call, Dev. Dev, leave the call. Dev, leave the call. Damn it. Hello? No? What the hell? Can you hear me?
Different thing.
Hello?
Of here. Turn off your... a caption. Elsewhere.
Hello?
Hello, I can hear you now.
Okay. So, that was weird.
What happened?
Only Discord is bugging. And it's only Discord. So there's still no problems.
Do you want to restart Discord real quick and see if that fixes it?
We can give it a try.
Yeah, I would just...
Alright, bye. I'm going to go as fast as possible. Okay, bye.
Got it.
We need to get the show back on track. I'm still here. Hi, everybody. Quitting Discord. Starting Discord. Eating a bite of amazing spaghetti because my dad's amazing cook. Mmm. Delicious. Why do I feel like that went too quickly? Exit Discord one more time. Okay. Starting Discord. There we go. Okay. Connecting. Connected. Starting call. Hey! I don't...
That was the weirdest one yet.
Hey! And it strikes again. Oh. I don't know what's going on.
Is it just Discord?
Yes. Stream's fine.
Okay, do what we did last week. Turn off your camera, put your camera there.
That's what I'm doing.
Alright. Last week made sense. This week doesn't.
Yeah. At least last week, everything messed up.
Yeah, it was a level of failure, not just...
I wonder if it's you. Hang on.
Hello.
Hello?
Alright, alright, let's try it.
Alright. So, you were saying about, like... I was talking about the characters that I liked, the ones that they explained, I had liked them.
Yes.
And then you were saying...
I know this may seem blasphemous, but maybe not have 13 dwarves.
You know, I would agree with you. Especially when a lot of the characters that we also get later on are also pretty unneeded.
Right? We'll talk more about unneeded characters as these movies progress. But I think that's where this movie starts to fail immediately, is that these characters don't have time to be characters, and they're just there the entire time. Mm-hmm. The ones who, you know, perfectly fine with having in, of course, Thorin, Balin and Dwalin, mm-hmm. Duh. Feely Keely because they're Thorn's kids, mm-hmm. or one of them. I'm willing to give up one of them.
I would give up Keely, I think. Feely's the one who gets with
No, that's Keeley.
Okay, then I would keep Keeley and get rid of Feely.
Fair. What's his name? Where is he? The one that always is Beaufort, because him and Pippin him and Bilbo have that like a lot of moments together.
Mm-hmm. Beaufort,
the one in the cave,
mustache with the nice hat.
They have a lot of really great moments together. Everyone else is straight up expendable.
Mm-hmm. And actually, at one point, I remember writing, "Fuck you, Bomber." Like, I think that was in the second movie, but still, I remember thinking, "You're just breaking the laws of physics." Fuck you.
Oh yeah, yeah. See, I talked about it a little bit during this one when me and Steven watched it together, because there's the scenes in the caves that like you can't really follow the action, and the action just like my biggest problem with the action in this entire trilogy is that it feels like they. How did I write it down? They bumbled to success. That is how these movies go.
Okay.
Fights in the other movie, in like the other trilogy, it felt like they were hard-earned fights in most cases. Like, and you always felt in those, especially in the big battles, you felt people were in peril.
Mm-hmm.
But in this, I never really feel tension, because especially after the second one, because I just know that physics don't matter no more. Them damn physics don't matter no more. They ain't here. And that no matter what, they're gonna bumble their way through it.
I kind of have two questions then about that.
Yes.
Does it matter? Like, The Lord of the Rings.
Steven from Horror HQ, go ahead.
Yes. The Lord of the Rings is considerably more of an adult-themed book than The Hobbit. Does that matter then with the fights to you then? Because
it would if it wouldn't if they also didn't try to be so heavy-handedly in the same universe, or like so closely related to those. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like either like I think that's part of the problem, that it like yes, The Hobbit is more kid-friendly. But this movie has a lot of things that aren't, like this trilogy essentially has a lot of moments that aren't super kid friendly and that are very heavily tied into the Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't like you're gonna have to draw parallels to it because the movie's making you draw parallels to it.
There are times when there are definitely times in this movie where it's definitely like, hey, remember when we did this in this movie? Yeah. So I can kind of agree with you at times. But
well, that's the whole thing with Gollum
mm-hmm.
in this. When he shows up, it's just like a lot of the way he says his lines, if I remember correctly, aren't like how he says them in like they add little things,
mm-hmm.
Like tricks and battles and stuff like that to tie
mm-hmm.
that not better, and like cool, but if you're not like. If you don't want us to compare to the Lord of the Rings so much,
mm-hmm.
maybe don't make us always go like, hey, remember the Lord of the Rings so much. Mm-hmm. The first movie does it the least, and that's I think why I like it more. There are a couple issues I have from just a book standpoint, like the fact that the eagles in this dude are just MacGuffins. They just and there's nothing to them. Honestly, that's a huge missed opportunity, in my opinion, because it would make them showing up in the Lord of the Rings cooler. You know what I mean?
Yes, but at the same time, we don't need to spend time with the Eagles if we already have too many characters and not enough time with them.
I agree. Which is also why I don't like, and I'll get into it with Battle of Five Armies, but also why I have issues with that because of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like, overall, though, like, this one is the least egregious with a lot of its stuff. And yeah, no, like, the problem is, like, its biggest problem is that there isn't enough space for everyone. And there is the whole scenes in Rivendell when he walks around and it's like, oh, the sword, and oh, the painting, and oh, and it's like, okay, cool, yes, I get it. Those are there. Maybe I'd be less upset if it was like in the background and not him literally walking up to it. Like, if they walked through that room without walking like
directly to interact with it.
Yeah, like I'd be less like, okay, because I think that's part of my issues with prequels in general is when they egregiously be like, hey, remember this from the originals? Well, now it's here. It was one of our problems with Fantastic Beasts. Remember McGonagall?
Who wasn't even born then?
Yeah, now she's in this. Or with the prequels of the prequels. If you don't know what that means, wow, congrats. But like with the prequels, the big problem with those is that like there's a lot of ham-fisted. Oh, remember this from this? So here's this. Oh, C-3PO was built by Anakin. Whoa! Things like that. That it's like, and like, yeah, I get the like you want to rhyme. Like Lucas knows this. You do want to rhyme with what you did before.
Yeah.
And that makes sense because that means that like your series has thematic sense. But when you ham-fist blunt it down my throat,
I feel like you're isolating all three of the movies when you're saying this, and not just the first one at this moment.
I will again. I will say the first one does it the least. The only things really from the first one is really going to be Rivendell. Changing some of Gollum's lines, which, okay, fine. I can appreciate that one more because it does try to connect the parallels between his character later in the Lord of the Rings. And with, there was one other thing, and I wish I would have written down, because I remember seeing, I think it's the intro is one of my issues with it. It's just because, like, we don't need the whole old Bilbo scenes.
Okay.
Like, I wouldn't mind an opening narration with him and, like, with, Martin Freeman, like, walking around, but I have old Bilbo do the narration to the beginning. And then where this ends, I'd be okay with that. But it feels like it's, like, it's drawing its parallels too quickly. And that's, I think, where I start to get more issues as this goes on, especially with the action. Like, I know you have a problem with Fellowship's action.
Yes.
But I would wait, like, 1,000 times, honestly, rather watch that than the cave scenes. Or that scene with the fucking chase around the rocks.
Okay.
So, personal opinion.
Like,
go with your positives, and I will...
No worries. Like, with me and the things that I like, though, for instance, I liked the actual old person exposition. I don't think Frodo was needed. He's actually egregiously unneeded. But I like that it starts with the old person talking, and then it transitions smoothly and we get to see old Bilbo. I like that part. And then it transitions into young, because if we only have the young guy and we don't see the old Bilbo, sure, we as an audience who are major, like, movie-going fans might know that just by the voice of the old person that, hey, that's old Bilbo, and this is young Bilbo by correlation. But people who aren't good at watching movies, who aren't fans, need to see that this is old Bilbo going to young Bilbo. And they need to see that correlation between the two. So I kind of like that.
Okay, that's fair.
But then from that point on, there are definitely things that I don't like. One specific thing that bugs me with this movie is this one feels extremely cliche to the point where, like, I actually pulled up the hero's journey while we were watching this movie, and I could mark down spot for spot exactly when the hero's journey happened. And
well, I mean, that is the story of the Hobbit.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, the book itself. So,
that being said, it felt a little too cliche for me in that aspect. But there are some of the things that I did kind of enjoy when it comes to the things. Like, sure, the fighting felt like bumbling. I agree with you 100%. And we did a lot of random jumps from one place to the next. But a lot of the reason why I like that is because it felt less graphic and gratuitous. It felt more playful and more kid-like. So I guess I kind of enjoyed that a little bit. I didn't like the gratuitous amount of, hey, check this out, or hey, you know this, or hey, when that happened. Especially because they do it sometimes just because they can. Like when all of the dwarves are meeting together with Bilbo for the first time, and Gandalf does the "I can make the room dark with my magic" trick.
That was so gratuitous. That's the thing. That was the other thing. Thank you. That was one of the moments where my brain went, "Oh no." And to counterpoint something with the action. Sure, it's more kid-friendly and fun, but these movies weren't targeted at kids.
True.
That's the other thing I will point out. They were targeted at the people who either grew up watching Lord of the Rings or were adults watching the Lord of the Rings, showing them to the kids who were growing up to it. And yeah, like, I probably watched Lord of the Rings God knows how many times a year growing up as a kid. But, like, what? It's PG-13?
Mm-hmm. I was just looking at that.
This isn't... They aren't going for a G. You know what I mean? They ain't going for a PG. And the other thing, too, is as the movies go on, there are more gratuitous, violent scenes that happen throughout them. So this first movie's kid-friendly action is kind of dumb. Also, given that, like, it does the kid-friendly thing and then cuts someone's gut open.
That's true.
Like there's not a... What's the level? You know what I mean? Are we kid-friendly violence, or are we Lord of the Rings original trilogy violence? Like, what are we? I think that's also my problem with it too.
Okay.
Like, there's a contrast. Like, there is a medium that you could find in there that works, but it flashes back and forth between the two. Like, oop, funny ladder moment. Oh, and then we just cut that giant goblin's gut open. And I'm just like, they're kind of very contrasting moments.
Well, yeah, I agree with you on that part. Yes, the moods in that fight specifically are contrasty, but at the same time, I feel like the most middle of the road fight would either be this one here, the one where it makes the most sense thematically, where it's some violence because it's Lord of the Rings, but being jolly and playful because it's The Hobbit. Like, it would either be this fight or a fight later on in the second movie, in Rivendell. Like, it'd be those two fights.
Not Rivendell, the other one?
No, I'm talking about on the river.
That's not Rivendell.
Sorry, whatever. Elf Village number 3.
There. I'll allow it.
Oh, God. That's the one thing I still can't understand is the fucking names of places and people.
No one does.
At one point, I wanted to make the graphic early for the show today. I wanted to have a bunch of us from Har Har in the background so it could make like 13 of us, and you and me were going to be in the front. And I was just going to come up with a bunch of random names, like featuring Oin, Cloyne, Loin, Floin, and Join. And then I laughed because two of the random names that I thought of were actually names of the characters in the movie.
Loin?
It's Oin and Gloin.
Yeah, Oin and Gloin.
Mm-hmm. And then there's Feely and Keely. There's Bofer and Biffer, and then Bomber, and
Balwin and Dwalin, and Thorin the King, Nori, Dory, and Ori.
Mm-hmm. Did we get
and
Dwalin?
That's all of them. Yeah, I said Dwalin.
Okay.
With Dwalin.
Dwalin, Ballin. Is there Dallin? Is he a character?
No. Also, Gloin apparently spawns Gimli. Mm-hmm. But if you look at that family line, like, they're all very similar names, then all of a sudden Gimli. I'm like, why did you decide to switch? What was wrong with your old naming system, Gloin?
Yeah. He just didn't feel like having an Oin.
Apparently. But his dad was Oin, if I remember correctly. It's really dumb. And if you actually look up the dwarven tree of important people, from that you see this tapestry of all the people that are important. You're like, oh shit. There are a lot of there's like 3 or 4 Thorins. And you're like, what the fuck? There's a couple Thrains. It's just a lot of repeats. But the other thing too, I have a problem with the dwarves is that like none of them are really unique weapon people as well.
Mm.
That's another problem I have with the action. Everyone uses pretty much the same weapons. They're either using an axe or a sword. You know what made the other Lord of the Rings stuff interesting was that, hey, you had a dude who short with an axe, bowman, long swordsman with a shield, hobbits, which we don't know how they're going to fight. Fucking Sam fights with a fucking frying pan? That's fucking nuts! And you have Gandalf with a staff and a longsword. Mm-hmm. All of them very unique from each other, except for like 3 of the hobbits only use dagger. While one of the hobbits used dagger and frying pan. But again, the hobbits didn't fight a ton. So you didn't have that issue of you don't, like, during the action, you can tell who's where during it. There are times during the cave scene, at least, where I'm like, all right, that was who? Because there are several bald ones. There are several gray-haired ones. There are several orange-haired ones. And they're all the same height. The only ones that I can always tell in the fight is Feely and Keely because they're young. Mm-hmm. And Thorn because he's the important one. The rest of them, if they're running in a group, I'm like, oh, there's a little different mustache.
Mm-hmm. Like, part of me gets that complaint where we can, but part of me also feels in this first movie, it's not about the characteristics of the individuals. It's more about the characteristic of the group and developing the group. Where what it seems like for us on the outside is that our 13 dwarves work well together, and they work well together always.
Okay. Yes.
And then now it's about getting in with this 14th member and how with that 14th member how things have to start gelling together again. And the only problem with me saying that is the 14th member really doesn't do much when it comes to the fighting scenes and things. But
and he disappears during the entire fighting scene in the cave. He's in a completely different subplot at that point.
But at the same time, part of the thing I like is that whenever we have them all together in a fighting scene, sure, they're bumbling around, and sure, they're all using the same weapons, but part of it's their adaptability and the fact that they're going on the fly and working with each other because they just know each other so well. And
I mean, and okay, that's I can concede that point, but to counter it, it's Michael Bay explosion.
I guess I don't think it's that much.
It's
I don't
not
think
that
it's similar.
gratuitous. It's like it's Transformers issue is the problem. Okay, when you're watching Transformers action, you can't keep track of who's fighting who because they all look the same except for Bumblebee and Optimus. Because Optimus is nice blue-red, really easy to see.
Yellow, and then everyone else
Bumblebee's
is gray.
yellow. Everyone else is gray, black, maybe some greens. But there's no one that when they're all around each other, it's just metal on metal fighting each other. You don't have it to that degree issue in this because like it's against goblins. They're easy to tell, but you can't tell who in the group is who. And you can also have that issue with personality because again, beyond
because they're all basically the same.
They are. Again, and I think my biggest issue is that like this movie doesn't take time to tell the dwarf story. It takes time to do the whole side stuff that's the fucking Silmarillion stuff. Personal opinion: would you cut that to give the dwarves more time to become more characters?
See, I don't know, because part of the reason that this movie even has tension in it is because of Azog. And he is not in The Hobbit originally.
No.
So in this movie, the way it plays out and the way I saw it.
Well, okay. Are you talking about Azog, the warrior, right?
The white door, the white orc.
I'm okay with leaving that in. I'm more talking about like the necromancer.
Necromancer. That plot line, I actually kind of like it, in a way.
That's fair, and I'm fine with you liking it.
Yeah,
but
like
would you cut it to make our main cast more interesting?
In this first movie, there's barely any necromancer plot in here to begin with.
There's what? Because we
get a flashback from Radagast's place to him going through Dol Guldur, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And we also get to learn about the sword. And with the sword, we go to the White Council, I believe.
Yes. But what I'll say to that is we could cut honestly, I do enjoy some of the Radagast stuff, but we cut the council stuff, and we follow their journey. Because, like, during the scene that they do the council, apparently the dwarves just leave.
Yes.
But what if we got to see them do a sneak out together, and we got to see, like, some of the other ones do skills we didn't know they had? Like, maybe one of them's also really good lockpick, or a really good locksmith, so he's able to get through doors that, like, others aren't. Stuff like that.
Now you're talking D&D.
but you know what I mean, though. Like, give, like, each of them unique skills that we can build upon with their characters.
But at the same time, like, I would rather just get rid of the doors we don't need.
Again, that's fine. Either way.
That's the compromise I would make. Like, because I like the story the way it unfolds that we have.
But let's say they don't do that.
If they don't get rid of the dwarves, I kind of like the connections that we have. Don't get me wrong. I don't like the overall ending of the Necromancer. But I do like some of it.
We'll talk more in spoilers on that. All right, we should probably move on to the next movie because we're going to go around in circles.
I was about to say, at this point, we're already talking about the other two movies. We haven't even gotten to the second movie.
No, we haven't.
Stop jumping ahead, Dev. Gosh.
Sorry. I can't help it with this one because
we're not talking about all three movies yet. We're talking about the one movie.
Fair enough. The problem with that is that these three movies, honestly, we could do each of the Lord of the Rings on their own, but could you imagine doing each one of these on their own?
I could, yes. I have 3 pages of notes on each one of these movies. I could do one on each of these.
See, but then I look like an idiot because my problems are in overarching issues. And I would just look like, wait till the next week, like a crazy bastard. I wouldn't enjoy that.
I know. And that's part of the reason... Sorry, 1 second. And that is part of the reason why we have a fundamental difference in critiquing this. Because a lot of your things are overarching issues. My assumption, I know this isn't true, but my assumption is because you like the story better from the book and how it overarches from beginning to end there. And then you compare it directly to the movie, where it's not quite the same from beginning to end, and you have a fondness, nostalgia that turns it kind of bitter.
Hey, I'm going to do this. Civil War comic book is one of my favorite graphic novels that I've ever read, all right? I love so much about it. From Thorg, not Thorg, but like the Thor Ragnarok fucking robot. We'll call him Ragnarok. I think his name is Ragnarok. From that to Tony and Cap, like, having this ideal difference, from Cap's speech to all the scenes, Goliath, all the things that happen, I fucking love. Half that, like, most of that book does not happen in the movie, but they take the core of that movie. If you take the cores of both of them, they're going to be very similarly themed. They're going to have that same theme, the same underlining, like, ideal, and they're going to have a lot of the same characters line up where they're supposed to be from what they did.
Okay.
This trilogy does not do that with The Hobbit. Essentially what it does is turn The Hobbit into a prequel. But The Hobbit book wasn't a prequel. It was a standalone. And these movies aren't standalone. They're a prequel to The Lord of the Rings. That is what they're doing at the core. And it starts with this one, and it gets gratuitously worse as we go on. That is my problem. It's the same problem with the prequels.
Okay.
The prequels for Star Wars try to ham-fist so much shit together that George Lucas almost forgot that Obi-Wan needed the fucking lightsaber at the end because of how much other shit he was ham-fisting into it. Which, that would have been a huge fucking problem.
Okay.
And this trilogy, and I will get into it far harder in the spoilers, does some shit that adds so many fucking questions to The Lord of the Rings. movies.
Okay.
Because if you're making a prequel, don't make it a prequel that has to tie into the thing, right? Like, maybe little nods here and there. That was one of our problems with Captain Marvel. I'll even admit that, was that it was too ham-fisted. Like, oh, there's the Tesseract, there's this. That was some of the things we did complain about for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, cool, yeah, there's the Tesseract, but, like, it's cool to see how they got it, but it's the plot line of the movie, and it's been the plot line for 3 fucking movies already.
Okay, so, now that you said that, I have a couple other questions then. What is the core theme of the Hobbit book? Can you tell me that?
It's a hero's journey, yes.
Okay.
It's Bilbo's journey from being a Hobbit recluse, which is what their people are, into being an adventurer.
Okay.
Yes. And yes, there are themes of that, but that is not the core theme of this movie.
Okay. You think the only point that they made this movie is because the Lord of the Rings is... Well, I'm oversimplifying it, of course. But you think that they made this movie just because the Lord of the Rings was popular. That's it.
Yes.
Okay.
100%. It was going to be 2 movies, Steven.
Mm-hmm.
Why make it a 3rd movie if you're not already like, oh, fucking money?
Mm-hmm. I agree with you in a way. I agree with you in one way. It didn't have to be 3 movies. But at the same time, I think there's enough individually here to make this stand alone. Like,
the first one, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But as this goes on, as we go into the next 2, no.
I will debate you on that when we get there.
Hey, fine,
so
let's get there.
So
Give
for
me
this
my
first,
popcorn.
I was getting there. God, now you're rushing me. All right, so the first movie, 10 popcorn kernels. How many are you gonna give this one?
I'm gonna give it a 6. Maybe I'll give it a 7. I'll give it a 7.
Okay.
Being kind. Because the other ones I'm not gonna be as kind to.
Okay. Because
for me, it's an average movie.
Okay, I would also give this one a 7 myself.
We knew it was gonna happen.
See,
we knew it was happening. I hate it.
I'm not even mad yet. You're already frustrated. I'm sitting here like, we haven't even got to the stuff that's gonna make me frustrated.
Oh, I know. Well, the problem is, I'm like... The problem is that when we get to what I'm frustrated about, it's gonna piss me off more. Are we on the Desolation of Smog, then?
Yes, we're going on to the Desolation of Smog, movie 2.
Boy!
Alright.
Hey! Smog is in 40 minutes of this! It's almost 3 hours, Steven! He's in the last 40! I'm sorry! And he does dick all! I wrote that down as my last note!
So, how do you feel, then, about, just a direct comparison, the Emperor of the original 3 Star Wars, 4, 5, and 6, only being in the movie for like 20 minutes?
He wasn't the overarching bad guy. Like, the Empire was the bad guy, but Vader was the villain, okay? Mm-hmm. The Emperor is not the villain through all 3 of those movies. Smog has been talked about directly as the obstacle to surpass.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout the first movie and the first 2 hours, or 2 hours and 10 minutes of the second movie, right? And he doesn't show up until the last 40 of this movie and does nothing. This movie is called The Desolation of Smog.
Mm-hmm.
Live up to your title.
Do you know what desolation means?
What he did, yes.
Yeah, and the after effects, and...
But, no offense, show me a little better.
I don't
know what he did. I don't know what, like, other than the first 5 minutes of the first movie, I don't know how that town ran. There's no context for how Dale was. There's no context for how things were in the mine, other than, like, in the mines, maybe a couple lines from Dwalin. And he's the only one who talks about what happened inside those mines, really, except because while Thorin and Dwalin both lived there, and they don't say dick all about their mines. It's Balin, not Dwalin. Dwalin doesn't say shit about the mines. Neither does Thorin. Balin's the only one who talks about the mines, but they all 3 lived there. That was their home. You would think that we would get more context for how things were. Maybe even, this might seem crazy. Maybe when they first walk in there, and you get a little bit in there, maybe like let's say there's a bug, okay? When they open up the door, that flies in there. And as it flies in there, it transitions into the old dwarven mines. And we see how things were there. And how cool they were. Like, yeah, we got to see a little bit with, like, the mining and stuff like that. But that's it. All we got to see, we didn't see what life was there. We didn't see how it affected the people. Like, the people who we know who lived there. We never got to see how they truly lived their lives. We just saw them standing next to a throne. That's all we saw those three do.
It doesn't matter that the throne's destroyed, that everything around the mountain is destroyed.
Why do I care? There's nothing.
The whole first movie tells you why you care. Because these people and everybody around those people in this situation lost their homes, lost their family. Many lost their lives.
3 people lost their homes. That we care about. And one of them we don't care that much about because Dwalin doesn't do shit for the first 2 films. Balin we care about because he's the old wise character. Thorin we care about because he's the king. Okay?
Technically, all 13 of those characters lived in those mines.
No.
Based on what they tell us, they're all sons of Durin. And they tell us that the sons of Durin either lived in the mines of Moria or in Erebor.
Yes, but those ones didn't live there. The rest of the cast weren't born when they lived in the mines. They weren't there, as far as I could tell, because they're like. So when they get there, they don't act like. So when they're getting there.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
When they're getting there, there's that scene where like Balin talks about what happened that day. You weren't there to them, to the group.
Okay.
And we get that whole war flashback.
Okay.
Right? Of the mines of Moria, stuff like that. Like you weren't there, you didn't experience what happened. Me, Dwalin, and Thorn, we were there for that, and then we went to the mines of Moria. Like we were the 3 who went to that. Like maybe a few of you experienced that, but we survived this, the desolation. Like.
So you're saying that because they didn't live there before it was destroyed, they don't have a right to feel upset?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that. Why do we care? We don't have we have one real emotional tie to this with Balin because he's the most talkative about it, and Thorin because it's his throne, and we're supposed to care about that. Dwalin being the only other one who's there who lived through that says dick all until the 3rd movie. Like. Name a line of dialogue that he says.
I can't.
That's important. Then why do we care about the mines other than the fact that Thorin needs the throne and the gem?
Because that was the point of the first movie. Was to get to the mines and to get to the gem. So why would they change the point of the second movie if it's not...
I'm saying,
so
give us some more context for caring. Because there's no context for caring about the mines. Like when
other
they walk
than
in
the
there,
fact
like,
that we've got to see that the mines... were full at one point. Sure, we don't get to see a lot, but we get to see this vast wealth. We get to see many dwarves, and we get to see the mines active. And we also get to hear about how it was a vast wealth of riches and all that stuff. But that's still not enough for you?
Because there's no personal connection to it.
So,
if that makes sense. Like, okay. There's no one, like, I don't have a connection to the city of Erebor, other than the one scene like, oh hey, there's the king, his son, Thorn,
I get that.
And Dwalin next to the throne. That's how I'm supposed to identify that they lived here. That's it.
So okay,
I don't have any other context for what like their lives there.
Quick question then. I'm gonna take this a little bit out of context.
Fine,
but I feel like this will help. So theoretically, should I not care about my African-American neighbors who had something stolen from them at one point, and their sons and daughters, even though I don't know them and I don't know the context about that situation, and should I still not care that these person were wronged?
I'm not saying don't care. I'm saying I would like to have more reason to care, if that makes sense. Like with this. With this story, because no offense, one's real, one's a movie. I'm sorry.
I get you, but
with a movie, you want to make your characters cared about, because also throughout this movie, Thorne is becoming more and more of a dick.
Mm-hmm. That's actually something I kind of liked.
Yes, but the problem is we're supposed to care about him getting there. And at least in the book, I'm going to make this comparison. If I remember correctly, he starts to become a dick after they get there.
In this one...
But he's being a dick further and further throughout.
It starts in the forest. I wrote that.
Yes. Yeah. It starts being a dick in the forest. And yeah, he's supposed to turn down the elves' help because dwarves and elves don't get along. That happens. But he's irately angry. And then when they get to Lake Town, he's a dick there. Mm-hmm. These people are trying to help him. And he's just a dick. We want them to succeed, but like at the same time, because also the side quest, right? Mm-hmm. Of the whole like, hey, Gandalf wants them to wait and stuff like that. Gandalf is held up because also during this time, Gandalf decides to go to that fucking necromancer thing and take care of that. Mm-hmm. We find out, this is only in the extended stuff, that Thrain is alive. Okay? Yeah. Thrain doesn't show up in the original cut. That's added. Sorry.
So you're jumping ahead again, Dev. We're not spoilers yet. But you can keep going.
But there's moments during that like... I don't know. It's just... It adds... It's trying to... like, there's a moment when they're cutting between the two things happening. Like, it's supposed to be, like... It's supposed to be dual planes of action. Mm-hmm. But one of the planes of action is them trying to get into the cave. The other planes is the fight there. And running around and being chased by this snarling creature running around. And it's cutting back and forth. And I'm like... These planes of action... don't correlate with each other, because usually if you're going to have dual planes of action, there's got to be some similarity between them.
That one I'll agree with you. That one is just bad editing and bad storytelling editing. That one I can agree with.
But like, why? It's just more of my issues are just spoiler related, like the fact that like, can we talk about Pretty Boy for a second?
Pretty Boy King? Oh,
no,
him. How he was added?
Yes.
He's a character that I would agree he's not needed. Like, there are even moments where he does stuff, and I'm like, wow, really? You can do that? Alright, that's interesting. But at the same time, I kind of can, like, I would take him out of this movie. I agree with you. But when I think back to it, I want to ask you about the Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Does his character in the Lord of the Rings really have any character development when you think about it?
Other than a friendship with a dwarf? No.
Yeah.
But was his character as OP as he was in the Lord of the Rings? As he is in the Hobbit? Because my God, the dude's a god.
In a way, he is a god. Yes.
Did he rank up all of his skills and go, you know, I'm going to do a reset before this. Oh, I've got to go on a perilous journey. Oh, that's
maybe I should have reset
to do that. Because the dude is literally jumping off of people, like he's doing shit. I started this list because of a Wilhelm and Legolas surf counter, because he at least surfs twice in this movie.
Yeah, he does surf off of the dwarves.
And it gets worse in the third movie. That it's not even surfing; it's just what the fuck isms. Mm-hmm. Literally, I have like when we get there, I have a fun note. But like, I don't want him in this movie because it's like maybe if they got there and you saw Legolas talking to his father, okay, cool. But he
just shows up
throughout this movie.
Yeah.
Yes, literally, what I created was why Legolas ? And every time I did that was a random point in the third movie when Legolas shows up to do stuff. Then I'm like, but why did we have Legolas do that? Mm-hmm. I didn't start in this one because Didn't think of it yet. But there's several moments in this one where Legolas shows up, and I'm like, why is Legolas doing this? Like, at the end, during that chase thing, I'm like, also, during that, when he's fighting an orc, if you pay attention to the choreograph, he lets him grapple him. The grapple that happens, Legolas lets happen. But the entire rest of this fight, Legolas is kicking everything's ass. And then he's like, oh, whoops, you grappled me. Oh, no. And I'm like, that doesn't, like, from just a fight context, that doesn't make sense. And to counter your kid-friendly, how many decapitations?
There are a lot of decapitations.
I didn't keep track. There's a shit ton of decapitations.
You know, though, in the
decapitations. And the counter goes, like,
however,
in the next one.
The things that make it not gratuitous and more funny, the fact that there's no blood, there's no gore, the fact that
there's blood.
There's minimal blood, but there's barely ever
blood. It's not the regular blood.
It's digital blood. And if we see it, it's not like splattering everywhere. It's barely ever dripping off a weapon, if any. Like, it's kind of just existing if it's there. And the orcs make funny faces anytime they're dismembered.
Okay, fair. But I counter you. If this takes place in the same universe as Lord of the Rings, does that not break the world's existing rules?
What does the decapitation break? I'm confused.
I'm saying with, like, blood, fighting, and stuff like that. Because in my opinion, this movie breaks the physics of the world already established.
Like,
especially the river scene on multiple levels.
In a way, yes and no. Because, like, the river scene I don't like for many reasons. One of the things I don't like is clearly we can see those barrels going underneath the water. So how, when they're full of water, can they float back up to the surface? That also, is because
I really hated the cuts to the GoPro during
yes, that was one of the things I wrote down. Is why the hell is there fucking GoPro cuts? It's so obviously a fucking GoPro. It's like, why is that in there? So that
it was so. Oh man.
Yeah, that one I'll give you, yes. But like, and the fact that the barrels don't sink, I hate. The fact that I won't give you is that it's established that elves are magically light. So him stepping on them and them not sinking makes sense to me. It's been established not in this movie.
That's established.
Yes.
But the other shit is more what I'm talking about. Like
him murdering people like nonstop, or
like his body count, like
he does ridiculous kills in The Lord of the Rings as well.
Yes. But not to this degree. Like, the elephant kill seems tame to some of the shit he does in this.
In a way, yes. But I think it's because movie needs to movie, and it needs to be inciting.
Okay, no, that's fair. Movie needs to movie. But usually when I say movie needs to movie, for me, it at least fits in the context of pre-established stuff, if that makes sense. Like, the rat touching the button, movie needs to movie, but that doesn't break things.
I mean, that one's just other. To me, I hate because that's just utter coincidence.
Yes, but you know, Doctor Strange said the one way, and that was it, and that was one of the maybe let's say that was it. Out of the 14 million he saw, 500,000 had the right push the button.
Still, like I get that, but the reason I don't like it is because a rat pushes the button and explained because I could see time. Sure. The reason I am fine with him killing so much in this movie is because it helped. Like, there's no takeaway of tension when he does it other than the fact that he's a badass, and it makes him look more of a badass. But sure.
When was there tension? During that scene?
I don't think there's ever really supposed to be tension, but that's another
Then why do I care about action in this movie?
Because it's an action movie. It's not...
I don't care.
Welcome to me watching most action films. This is why I don't
like most action films have tension. Okay? There's a tension to an action scene, okay? Every John Wick scene, there's tension. Because yes, we know he's gonna get out of it because it's John fucking Wick, but how does he get out of it? Does he get hurt during this scene? Because if he gets hurt during this scene, that'll affect him in the next scenes. How does he, take out those three guys with those two guys over there as well? How, do they see him? Is he doing stealth? Is he not? There's layers of tension in a scene like that. Even in Avengers, in the one cut for Avengers, the first movie, the tension is, hey, we need to save civilians, we need to get Loki, and then we need to turn off the reactor up top. That's your tension stuff, because with that, if that portal stays open, more things are going to keep coming, we're going to get fucked over. Mm-hmm. We need to save as many lives as possible, because that's, we're heroes. That's what we do. And we need to stop Loki because he's running the show. That's your tension.
Okay.
In this, the tension is barrel ride?
In this, the tension is first imprisonment and not being able to finish the only goal that this movie is on. The second part is being killed and then not being able to finish the mission that we're on. So, sure, it's not much.
Was there tension to the prison if we knew that Bilbo was walking around with an invisible ring?
That part... Oh, sorry. I wasn't talking about prison specifically. I was talking about during the escape, the tension is imprisonment and being stopped. So, sure, he's already gone and escaped. I'm past that. Okay. Now they're escaping. So, no, there's no tension in the prison.
And that's fair. During that first scene when they get stopped at the gate, yes, there's tension.
Yes, there's
After the gate.
After the gate, the tension is people are literally trying to kill them. There are orcs literally falling on them and trying to stab them.
As has been established already, they're going to bumble their way through it.
In some way, yes. Like, Bomber, by far, bumbles his...
That kills all tension right there, the Bomber stuff.
That I'll give you, yes. Especially the fact that in the CGI cutscene of Bomber that we get, he sticks his arms and legs out of the barrels, and then there's, you can see his face, and then later on... His barrel's fine and it can still float?
No. What happens is that barrel breaks and he jumps into another barrel that was apparently there.
Even though all the barrels were full?
No, there was one empty because Bilbo didn't get in his.
Mm-hmm. And then later on there was enough barrels for everybody. Yeah. So continuity sucks in this movie. But, you're picking on...
You'd have literally, to know that, you'd have to pause that scene, count the barrels, and then go. Because Bilbo didn't get in his barrel. Mm-hmm. And then he does that thing where he slides down, and you're like, "Oh no! What about the barrel? Why didn't they get him up to the barrel that he was supposed to be in? Why did they just leave him on the side then?" Mm-hmm.
Because they were being chased, and they needed to fight and get away. So how can they move him forward if they need to escape first?
They can obviously throw shit around without any consequence.
So yeah, let's throw around this guy who's soaking wet in the water beneath you.
They could throw a soaking ass axe. They could throw around the heavy pound goddamn axes like it's nothing.
Yes, so an axe that's this size.
Less than that axe.
No, it does not.
Depending on what it's made of.
There's no way a Hobbit weighs less than an axe.
Hobbit, what? 4 foot? Maybe 4'8". 90 pounds. Max. For Bilbo at that age.
So...
Sorry, but Dwalin could throw him like a fucking easy thing.
So... Do you really think battle axes and hammers are 90 pounds?
No, I don't. But what I'm saying is, they seem to have no trouble throwing that. Okay? Mm-hmm. Like, throwing it?
But there's a difference between weapons and people.
Yes. But what I'm, if they're strong enough to throw a battle axe a good fucking, football, half a football field, they can throw a 90-pound person 3 barrels ahead.
Even though they have no bottom that they can hold. There's so many different things that I want to argue with you about.
Physics don't matter in this, Steven! Bomber can roll around and bounce wherever he wants!
I was about to say, but it doesn't matter what I say, because you say it doesn't fucking matter, because magic and physics. So, I'm at a point where I can't argue with you. And we can't...
Well, that's the problem.
I don't think that's a problem, though. I think at this point you're taking it too seriously, because you have a hatred for these movies that's deep down.
Okay.
I genuinely do.
Well, fuck me, then my opinion doesn't matter. Why am I here?
Alright, then we're done. Everybody have a good night. See you later.
I'm just trying to say, is that just... When you break physics, okay? Mm-hmm. And you have ridiculous... the whole Bomber thing, okay? Mm-hmm. That breaks reality.
Sure, and I'm also willing to let it go. I'm the critic here, and I'm willing to let it go.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not. This is a franchise I care about a lot. Okay, like, I love the original Lord of the Rings movies, and I love the Hobbit book. Okay, like, I grew up on them, so yes, I'm gonna have some personal stakes in it. Sorry, I like, as much as I would love to take my personal stake out of all of this, I can't because especially this movie starts to lean heavy into the Lord of the Rings.
Yes and no. Like, I don't think it leans heavier than The Hobbit or The Unexpected Journey.
It's heavier because we get the fucking 9. We talk, like, everything Gandalf does is talking about the fucking 9 rings of the men.
In a way, yes,
it
is.
That entire plot is, every time it's going to Gandalf, it's about the fact that these dead bodies were raised up that were the 9 rings of men. Their names were lost, but we're going to figure those out soon. Don't worry. We'll figure it out in between these movies.
And the problem then is just the writing in general at that point. Because, so...
Well, you want to know why there was a problem with the writing? A lot of this writing was on the fly, day of.
Sure, I'll give you that.
If you do the behind the scenes, like, actual stories from, like, cast members who, like, especially the New Zealand cast actors, because they got fucked over a lot. So they're a little more loose-lipped about everything. Where they can be. There was a lot of on-the-fly writing day of.
That happens in a lot of movies, believe it or not. But
no, and I know. But, like, there was entire days where everyone got, like, all the orcs and everyone got suited up and everything and makeup, 5 hours. And Peter Jackson calls it, and there's a scene, there's that thing where you've seen that meme where Peter Jackson's on the steps of the set like this? That was that day where he closed down the set because, like, the script wasn't ready. They just didn't have a script that day.
Okay.
And it shows. Because, like, a lot of this is just, like... Because, like... In this... I think it's this one that has the whole... Was it this one? Let me see. Oh, yeah. The Arwen comparison scene.
Arwen comparison. I don't remember that.
When Healy is dying of the arrow poison. And all of a sudden, our elvish lady comes in with the King's Weed, which this is all added. This was not in the book. All of the dwarves are supposed to get to the mountain at the same time. But our elven lady, who is, I can't remember her name, Evelyn Lilly.
Tariel.
Yeah.
Tariel or something like that.
All of a sudden, lights go up behind her, and she looks like her. She looks similar to the actress who plays Arwen. They have similar facial structure and stuff like that.
Now that's just racist. You think just because she's an elf, she looks like all other elves? God.
No, but when you backlight her, and then her hair starts to look dark and almost, black or dark brown, because there's a backlight behind her fucking head.
What if...
Yeah, and they play the same fucking music that they did during that scene?
In a way, yes. That's a bit of heavy-handed tie.
How do you explain that one without being like, no, yeah, we're just trying to make it 100% a comparison to that? It's the same weed. It's added in. It's not from the book. That is 100% added in for just the movie for that.
So, all of it's explained just based on the story so far. To me. So,
okay, yes.
Like,
but that's just added in to make a comparison to the original, the first 3 movies, the other 3 movies.
Sure, but that's not a bad thing sometimes.
Sometimes
yes. It can be. Like, it makes sense to me, though, in the context of this movie. Like, sure, the King's Foil is not in the Hobbit book. But in this movie, with slight spoilers for what's happening in this sequence right here, right now, he's just mad about the Hobbit in general. But we're talking about consistencies about things. Soy.
I didn't say like I said on the last one. There was stuff I enjoyed in the first one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but I'm not about the Hobbit at all. Right? I hate the entire fucking thing. Everyone fucking sucked in it. Fuck me. Whatever.
Wow, you sound like me when you're telling me I'm a hypocrite and about every superhero movie. Oh fuck me, I hate every superhero movie. Oh god. Like now you, like. Does this sound familiar?
don't do that. B.
Are you pulling?
Difference.
Are you taking a step back now? And okay.
Okay, fair. Yes, sometimes I do that to you, and sometimes it's the other way around. That's fine. That's how we do things sometimes. Okay. Sorry, the one time I'm critical. Fine. Do you want? Do you want me to be critical occasionally or not? Because I'm critical of something because I care about it. Okay. Because I want it to be what I like. I want it to be good. I want it to be like what it could have been.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem. This thing is gratuitously long. It's fucking 3 hours, man.
Mm-hmm.
Of nothing happening that really matters to this story until we get to the mountain. The mountain's the only part that matters to this story of The Hobbit. Because the other problem is, too, it's called The Hobbit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I'm sorry. If you're going to call the movie The Hobbit, you're going to get the comparisons to the book. Sorry. That's just how it is. Like, the original Lord of the Rings movies, they did not escape that ire either. During that, when they were like reviewed on other stuff who actually read those books. Sorry, I haven't read them yet. But I read The Hobbit. If I've read the source material, I will compare. That's just what I'm gonna do. And I'm sorry, when your entire movie feels like it's just building up to the stuff from the Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
I have issue with that because you're not telling your own story. You're telling the prequel to the story.
Retake. I mean, he kind of has a point there. In the original,
well, I mean, the prequels are fucking useless. What do the prequels do? Other than establish coolness of the Emperor, because he played both sides. Mm-hmm. The prequels are just the Emperor's story. Cut everything else. Honestly, we don't need the rest of the prequels.
God, now we're gonna get into what we don't need and do need of every single movie.
Well, I'm sorry, it's just like that's just mm-hmm. That's how I feel about these movies, because it's just like it's a lot of added stuff. Like, we do not need Legolas at all in this movie.
No, we don't. Legolas is in there because because the movie decides we need to have some sort of love triangle conflict between Keely, Tariel, and him.
Well, and the other problem with that conflict is what is their relationship? It doesn't matter to us, because I'm sorry. Oh, they shared maybe 5 minutes in this movie together. And we're supposed to they're madly in love. I'm sorry, that's not how you build a love story. I'm going to criticize that as well. The love story in this movie sucks.
I mean, yes.
Boring. There's nothing to it. It's a nothing burger. Cut it.
I was about to say, this
love
story.
On the editing floor.
Like, I can explain more about it in spoilers, but yes, the love story sucks. But because it's there, because it's there, I feel it excuses Legolas and stuff. Of course, the story is bad.
What does it do for Legolas' story?
What it does for Legolas, all it does is expose why Legolas is a badass fighter, and it explains why Legolas knows who Aragorn is in The Lord of the Rings. That's it.
Does that really? Then why do we have him?
We don't, except that Peter Jackson decided Legolas needs more time. We don't need him.
Because it doesn't do anything for him. And so why do we need the love triangle? Okay,
because
we don't cut Legolas, and then we get more time with those two together, okay?
Yeah.
Cool. We add an elf character. All right, fine, whatever. It's not like this movie already had too many characters. Wait, we complained about that with the first movie! The first one, we complained that there's too many characters without any development. So we said, hey,
cut out some of the dwarves.
As a person who likes The Hobbit, cut some of the dwarves. We don't need 13 dwarves because you don't give fucking 5 of them any form of development.
That's fine.
So then we add another character that gets no development into this movie?
Take a breath a little bit, please. You're yelling now. My ears are bleeding.
Sorry. It's just... You're trying to defend something that we had a problem with within the previous film. Let's add more characters?
I'm not defending. I'm also saying it's bad, but based on what we have in the movie already, it's excusable. I don't like it. I would still take it out, yes. But also, just to create a dialogue.
Excusable.
Okay. So, yes.
I guess that's my conflict. Why is it excusable?
It's excusable because it's part of what creates the tension in the movies. So... In a way. So there's
Explain,
emotion.
please, because for me, there's no tension with that because I like
1 second
the characters
here.
have zero.
So we're briefly going to switch to spoilers for the second movie. I made a graphic for it. We're okay. We're switching to spoilers.
Okay. Do we want to just give it points real quick?
Sure. Let me switch back real fast. Hang on 1 second. I have to switch the graphic back again. Hang on. So we're going back to movie version. Okay. All right, we're back to movie. Okay. How many?
5.5.
5. I would give it a 6.
That's lower than what I guessed.
Okay.
Still, it ends up with the average the exact same. So, but
okay.
Yeah.
Now, switching the spoilers for this movie real fast. So, part of the drama in this movie is the love triangle. The reason the love triangle exists is because Keeley, I think, was the one who died.
yes, Keeley.
Keeley was the one who was almost dead and was saved once from the spider attack in the forest. And at that point, it's called Florence Nightingale syndrome, or where you fall in love with the person who saves you. That's a well-known psychological thing. Sure, it doesn't explain it well, but it kind of happens. From this point on, the relationship between the two develops because only because Thranduil, the king elf of whatever kingdom we're in at the time, is a fucking dick. And he's honestly the one I think has the most character progression in this movie, in this whole series,
In this
actually.
trilogy?
Yeah. So.
And he's halfway showed up in the second movie?
Yeah. So, there's that.
I can agree on that because he's the only one that really fucking changes by the end of everything, other than Bilbo.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and then because he's such a dick, she learns that even though she loves Legolas, she can't be with him because his father is an asshole. So she only starts to get with Keeley because of that stuff. But Legolas this whole time is chasing after her because he still loves her. However, she can't love him because of the father. And over time, she does learn to actually love Keeley because he learns, sure, some of it's behind closed doors because we don't get to see their entire cell prison conversation, but they fall in love there, and she learns about his character with the talisman.
Yeah, okay, but we don't learn about his character.
We learn about it through the talisman.
We learn one thing about the talisman. That's it. That he promised to go back to his mom.
Mm-hmm.
That's all right. Feely's character development done. Because what do we get after that for him?
For him,
straight up,
the next time we get for him is him almost dying again from the Morgul poisoning, and then being saved.
How does it develop him, though?
How it develops him
as a
specifically, it doesn't.
How is his character developed at all?
His character isn't developing at this point. At that point, his character development is done, and what's happening to him is all for Thorin's character development. So, yes, he individually does not develop.
And also, chat, Rethrex is talking about build up for characters. But what characters are built up other than Thorin, Balin, Bilbo from the group?
Mm-hmm. I don't want to keep going too much into this because we still have to get the spoilers of everything.
We do have to get the spoilers of everything, okay?
Yeah.
I will say, since we're in the spoilers of this movie, though,
don't spoil too much.
Thrain is a fucking Wilhelm!
Thrain? Yeah.
Why? I know this is an added scene, but why make a important character a fucking Wilhelm screen for his death? Like, the fuck? That is disgusting. I mean, so many levels. Like, I know it's an added scene, but what the fuck, man?
But think about it though. He dies in a way that we can't even comprehend. How would you scream?
Give it a Wilhelm?
Yeah, why not?
you don't have the actor actually record something. You use the most recognizable.
My guess,
yell.
Only to play devil's advocate in this instance, my guess is they do have a recording of him doing it. It just wasn't emotional enough, so they just said, fuck it.
It'd be better than a Wilhelm.
I don't know. Have you ever been shredded apart?
The main three, I'm going to counter that with the next movie because the main three shouldn't just be a main three. Because there's an important thing that happens in the next movie that I question why they did it this way, and it's another change that would have to happen. That would be a change from the book to the movie. But it needs to be changed because the way they did it doesn't work. But with that being said, are we ready to move on? Or should I go into more spoilers about this movie, or should I save these spoilers?
Save these spoilers.
Okay, cool. On to the next movie. Let's go.
So yeah, we're moving on to movie number 3. Come on, transition. I told you to do it. There we go. All right, Hobbit and the Battle of the Five Armies.
Okay. Can I talk about my issues from the get-go?
Sure.
This one?
Hit me.
Why is Dragonfire always inconsistent no matter what you watch with Dragonfire involved?
I have no idea.
It's super inconsistent in this. Also, Smaug is only in 10 minutes of this.
That's
50 minutes total?
Mm-hmm. That's actually one of my biggest complaints about this whole thing is where they started this movie. I would have taken like the first 15, maybe 30 minutes of this movie and put it on the end of the last one. It would have made more sense. Like, I even wrote down on here when I would have put the actual main title. Because there were moments when you could have put the actual main title.
Yes. Also, I have a few issues with the how they take out Smaug and stuff like that, which are changed to make some form of thematic sense through everything. Which, fine, you can change a few things. Still lame as fuck. Also, I didn't talk about in the last movie, but the CGI for Smaug and like the gold and stuff like that fucking sucked in the last one.
The thing I hated the most about the last movie was the gold CGI. Like, I couldn't tell if it was gold, if it was lava, if it was metal, if it even if it was a liquid or not. Like,
or even some of the buildings. Like, there's a scene in the last one where they like grapple Smaug somehow, and the camera flips around, and I'm like, oh man! Oh yeah, I almost threw up.
There was one moment
that was motion sickness.
There was one moment where he's wrapped up in the minecarts. I was like, Jesus Christ! And from that moment on, the CG just got worse and worse. It felt.
Yeah, and it doesn't improve much by this one.
Yeah,
like
so then
this one isn't much of an improvement because it's a bunch of fire. It's the flying dragon. My problem with this is how did that thing hold up to shoot the bolt?
Sorry, one more time. I wasn't paying attention.
How did the thing hold up to shoot the bolt? Because there's tension involved. That thing would not have held enough tension to shoot that thing that far.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that one, there's no excuse. That's just magic because it can.
Movie got a movie, I guess.
Yeah. They need to end this little bit of tension so they can go on with the next part of the story.
Should have just been in the last movie. Also, like, this is the movie that I had 4 pages of notes on. Sorry, I had 5 pages of notes. This movie I had 4 pages of just because I started taking notes late into the second movie because of the Wilhelm scream. So I started this movie off taking notes. So I have a lot more thoughts on this. So we have that whole thing, right? And then we jump back to the other stuff. When did Gandalf have the MacGuffin that he had on him?
Wait.
The shiny. We'll call it the shiny.
His shiny?
His shiny.
Did that happen in this movie?
I figured you would know. Yes.
Yes, it did. I see it here. I wrote it down.
I figured you would have looked into this.
So, I think he's had it this whole time. We were just never told.
That might have been a key piece of information.
Isn't that an extended scene, though? Additionally? I don't remember, but...
No!
Okay.
Because they need that whole thing, or maybe. I don't remember 100% because also during that stuff, like, I think that happens in that because that's how the whole thing starts when Galadriel shows up.
Mm-hmm. Like, I honestly don't entirely know because I had questions, especially because there's a moment that's specifically extended edition in this movie where I was like, wait, it's at the end. And I'll tell you when we get to spoilers about it. But, like, there's a moment with one character specifically where I was like, does that happen in the theatrical cut? And if it does, do we get to see it when they're all next to each other? And I never could find it, so I don't know. So I'll talk to you about that later. But, so, that one, it's weird because it's never explained. That's more of like a, hey, Tolkien fans. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Yes, but also, you know what it does? is account all of the MacGuffins that are like it, because we see one of those MacGuffins in the last one with the Wilhelm guy.
Yeah.
Thrain, and then we see it here. In the last one, they counted up what was left, right? They said that of the 7, which are the dwarves,
3 were reclaimed.
5 were destroyed.
Yeah.
I think what was it? 5 were destroyed.
There's 7.
1 was 7. Yeah. So it was like what was it? 3 were reclaimed and destroyed.
Yeah, I think it was 3 were reclaimed by Sauron, 3 were destroyed by dragons or something else, and then the last one was missing, which was owned by Thrain.
Yes. The Elvins are accounted for.
The 3 from the elves.
Because of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm just going to reveal. It's a Ring of Power, whatever.
Yeah.
And we know where the 9 are. Easy.
Mm-hmm.
Because they become Dark Souls bosses in this. Because that's literally what I put. I literally put in this. Where is it? Why the Dark Souls fight? Because that's what it is. It's 100% just.
I put in the last movie, so Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows.
That's what, like, dude. And the fighting for that was so fucking confusing.
Like
that scene.
The one thing that I don't like about The Hobbit, actually, I'll say specifically, is the fact that movie magic exists. Like, CG is very much prominent in movie making nowadays. And I really liked with the original Lord of the Rings that the use of magic was powerful, but it was very subtle. And in this movie, it's quite the opposite. Magic is very powerful, and it's not subtle.
No, there's no subtlety to magic in this.
Mm-hmm.
Because the other thing, like, again, like, did we need 9? Like, the other problem too is there's 9 specters in a 9v2-ish. How do they lose that fight? I don't care how OP those guys are. How do they lose that fight? Like, it's the way they're fighting too. Because, like, I'm sorry, there are plenty of times, and even if some of the stuff is added in the extended stuff, there are plenty of times where they could have just gone for the back. And I know plot armor's a thing because they need it to exist for the next ones, but still.
That's actually, I didn't get to that in the last movie
tension.
either. In the last movie, because we were focused on everything else, there was a moment in the last movie, there are lots of moments in the last movie where they were, like, foreshadowing Gandalf falling. Like, there are many times where he's, like, sliding, be like, oh, okay. And I was like, that was very much specifically just for whatever. Hey, thank
you for the biddies, the 101.
Yeah. So, there's that.
God, no, right. Like, it's... Also, like, to backtrack a little bit, like, Legolas just shows up after what he because he leaves at the end of the last one, and then just reappears at the beginning of this one. After what happens in Lake Town.
It's actually kind of funny, because this movie is by far the most convenient when it comes to a movie.
Right?
Like... This one is the worst written. I have it in here. I wrote down every time there was like an Ex Machina moment where somebody just shows up and saves the day. And I wrote down, I didn't count it, I should have done this beforehand. There was 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 moments of Ex Machina in this movie, where it's just like, and suddenly this person's here, and suddenly.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah, that's what Ex Machina, or like a sudden situation where it changes. Yeah. That's what an Ex Machina is.
Also, I really hated the line that Saruman has in this is, "I'll handle Sauron." I'm like, okay.
Yeah, like
I'm sorry, that's one of the big question raisers.
I was going to say, yeah, that one actually had me start asking questions, and I had to look it up later, which I found the answer to. So,
okay, is it spoilerific or
no? Yes and no. Like when that moment happened, I'll hand it. It made me think that he was already corrupted. That it was that exposure that made him like start to be like, you know what? Maybe, just maybe.
I knew he wasn't. My problem with it is, why aren't there? Because he's, because during the end of that, like, the thing goes to where it's supposed to be, and then he follows it. He's the only one that follows it.
Technically,
right?
no.
Well, he's supposed to, right?
Well, so oddly
he
enough,
says he's gonna go handle it.
Yes.
But then wouldn't you question that, hey, by the way, the thing's still there. What'd you do about it?
So
I just let it be there?
He says in the movie that Sauron is of no threat. Let me handle it. And what he means by that, essentially, my guess is that you guys don't have to worry about the Dark Lord at this point, because there's no way for him to return. He is just a soul. There's no ring without it. Whatever.
Yes. But when I hear someone say, I'll handle so-and-so...
You think that they're going to finish it completely?
Yes.
Okay. That's, like, I didn't get that impression only because the way he had talked about it so many times in the past is that, like, it's impossible. You can't come back because of this, that, and some other reason.
He knows he's back. So, and the way he says it, he's like, man, I messed up. Mm-hmm. I'll handle this.
I didn't get it that way.
Like, I'll handle... Mm-hmm. And also, it's a really cheesy line. Like, even from me, like... Mm-hmm. That is some, like, easy cheese line right there. I'll handle Sauron. And, I'm sorry, but, like, it raises so many questions. Like, when did he corrupt? Why didn't he finish him then? Why didn't what's his name? Elrond, Galadriel, or Gandalf go like, so you, what happened with him? I just left him in Mordor. Why didn't you handle him like you said you would? He was weak. We all knew he was weak. You said you'd handle it. And yet now he's raising an army over in Mordor. Well, how was that handling it there, Sauron? Saruman?
Pick your accent and stick with it.
I can't. What a little New Yorker. Like, how you gonna handle it there, Saruman? Like, he doesn't handle anything. It's such a dumb line, and I'm pretty sure that was in the regular cut.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Like, when I didn't think of it as, I'm going to take care of this right here, right now. I kind of thought of it in a way of, like, he's going to go start researching this, figure out what he needs to do to start getting the job done. Okay.
Even then, why wasn't anything done then?
Because by that time, yes... Because
there's too many questions.
It's explained later off. Yes, it's not explained in this movie. No, I was not thinking those questions. I didn't have those questions. Those didn't pop in my mind
because of Lord of the Rings.
That's like, yeah. I didn't have that. Even with the Lord of the Rings.
Well, because there's a 60-year gap. You would think that, like, hey, so what? Like, if they took it in the context that you took it of, he was going to look into it and what to do. You would think.
So
Elrond would be like, hey. So, what are we doing about it? What do we go do?
Do you remember the line in the second movie where Thranduil said, elves are patient? What's 100 years?
Yes.
That's kind of what I think that this moment is. Sure, to us, it's been 60 years, where did all this time and things go? But to the elves who only care about themselves and not the man and the people outside of their kingdom?
But... Those four know they don't have that time because they know what they're dealing with because they lived through it.
I mean, yes and no. Because I still think Sauron is having his... At that point, he still has his ego. He still thinks there's no way for him to come back. Sure, he saw him.
I don't think that. I don't think he thinks there's no way for him to come back. Because of the way he says, I'm sorry. Like, if we play that clip back, how he says it...
He says that he's weak and he's trapped without a body, and without the ring he can't come back. He says that.
Yes. Well, he can't come to full power.
Yeah.
He can't take a mortal form. And then he's like,
I'll handle it. Yes. Home. I get that part.
I'll handle it.
But we're just at a misunderstanding of what I handle it means. Because I don't think that means I'm going to kill him.
But I would as Elrond, after battling in that fight, I would sure hope that he would be killing him because I wouldn't want any chance of him coming back.
But
just saying.
I mean, there's a lot that this movie doesn't explain.
And then if that's what they do, and they're like, hey, you got to we got to put the Ring of Power back into Mordor. Mm-hmm. That's how we kill him. Maybe that's what happens in between, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to more questions about that later. Then continue.
Okay. Like, there's a lot of stuff that we don't know. Like, because I looked into this for a week straight, I know more things about this because I had some of those questions. But no. Let's see. One of the things I didn't like is overall, Radagast finally does his thing that's important, and it was pointless ultimately. So Radagast was unneeded. Still, we could have gotten rid of him.
Yep.
Let's see.
We also get a moose elk thing.
It's an elk. Magic elk. But
CGI elk.
Mm-hmm.
That looks awful. And we learned about Legos' mommy issues.
Yes. Yes, we do. Like, let's see. One of the biggest things, my biggest complaint, I think, for this movie was, well, it was the intro, where I think it should have been the ending. The second would have been the character Dane as a whole. Like, I didn't like him being 100% CG. Especially when
all of
our other dwarves weren't.
They were. But they all look so similar that it looks like an
Sorry, I mean, in our main dwarves, all the dwarves that we've seen in this movie were all real characters.
Yeah, no, that's fair,
And then at the very end, we see all 100% CGI dwarves. It's weird and off-putting.
The end of the trilogy, I will say, this happens like 40 minutes into the movie, and this fight goes forever.
Yeah, and then, let's see, there was a lot of plot armor moments.
Also, the CGI... the CGI army versus CGI army fucking sucked. I hated it.
Though there were moments in it that I liked, for sure. Like,
are you talking about like when the elves versus the dwarves?
Just all of it. Like, there are moments in each of the fights that I liked. Elves versus the dwarves, and then the elves and the dwarves versus the orcs.
Parts I can agree with, parts I don't, because, like, no offense, like, I guess part of it is too the spectacle. Like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm like comparing to Helm's Deep. Okay, this is gonna be this trilogy's Helm's Deep, right?
Technically, yes.
Helm's Deep was fucking awesome.
Mm-hmm. It was.
And it felt real. And it felt grounded. And it felt, holy shit, this is happening moments. During this, I'm sorry, my brain kind of turned off, and I'm like, oh, it's the droids versus the Gungans.
I didn't do that. Like, ultimately, I'll be honest, I didn't feel much threat or tension in most of this movie, only because for who I perceived the main character to be, Bilbo, there was really no tension.
No, he's barely in the beginning of this.
He's barely in the movie as a whole in this one. And, like, we already know what happens. He's narrating the beginning of the franchise as an old person. So, we don't have to worry about him at all.
No.
So, I wasn't really worried about him. Sure, there's other characters that we can worry about, but some of the characters are kind of dicks, and they either barely deserve the redemption that we get. Some of them are characters that we have no time with, so...
Speaking on that level, explain to me why Dwalin is the one talking to Thorn in the throne room and not Balin. Dwalin, the bald brother.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I do not know why it was him. But then again, it could have been any of the...
Because it's what happened in the book, Steven. Mm-hmm. We gotta keep true to the book. I'm sorry, but you don't build up that character's friendship with Thorn throughout the movies. That movie, that him being the one to have the conversation doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. You've built up the relationship between Balin and Thorn more. Just flip it. You've changed enough. Why keep this true? Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's just... What they choose to keep similar and what they don't bothers me because it doesn't make sense. Like, oh, the fans really want us to have Dwalin talk to Thorn in the throne room. We haven't built his character up at all. We've built up more Balin. Don't care. It's what the book says. But we've given up the book on multiple other things. Doesn't matter. It's what the book says. And we go off the book for this one. And I'm like, what the fuck's the point then?
You would be, like, don't get me wrong. I love you, Dev. But you would be the hardest Hollywood producer to please. I feel. Like...
No. It's easy. I'm easy to please. You've seen some of the movies I fucking love. But when I care about a franchise on multiple levels, and you're going around just kind of doing willy-nilly, like sometimes following the book, sometimes not, like on stuff that doesn't make, like this doesn't make sense to follow the book.
Like, to me, it doesn't matter which one of the dwarves talk to him. It doesn't matter if it's Dwalin, it doesn't matter if it's Feely or Keely or Oin or even Biffer with the axe still in
like,
his head, who can't speak common.
Balin makes sense because he's the old wise one that we've had the most time with.
Sure, yes.
Anyone to like as anyone who's going to call out Thorin during this thing, because they built it up to look like he would be the one to call him out too. Because he's the entire time he's talking to Bilbo about stuff and stuff like that. He's like, hey, guess what? Like, you know, like this is what happened to his grandfather. This is all this. He's the one who's the one talking about the story. He's the one who would do the call outs because he's seen it. He's the one who we've known has seen it because he's the one who vocally talks about it. And then you have Balin, who has done nothing other than fight scenes throughout this. We haven't built up him and Thorin's friendship from the book at all. Yeah. They are blood brothers through that.
The only reason it's justifiable is we actually get to introduce to him individually, and the first movie. He's the first dwarf that we see. So maybe it makes sense. Like, maybe it makes poetic sense because it's Dwalin who can essentially, in a way, convinces Bilbo to go on this journey, and it's Dwalin essentially, in a way, that convinces Thorin to go on. But
okay, fair, a little bit of a rhyme, but that doesn't make thematic sense, I guess, or doesn't make like character sense. Like,
and yeah, I'll give you that one.
Most of our character interactions for Thorin are with Balin, or his sons.
I'll give you that, absolutely. Like, I definitely don't...
Not Dwalin.
Yeah. Like, there's definitely no specific reason it has to be him. So, if we wanted to go based off of who he has a better relationship with, I would say, yes, Balin would have been a better choice.
Like, I think that's part of the reason why this bugs me so much, especially when we get to this one, is that, like, why we change multiple things from the books to make this movie different from it, but then we keep stupid things that don't matter as much, that haven't been built up in the way that they were in the book, because it's what was done in the book. Like, it doesn't work. It's like in Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. We didn't need the Mouth of Sauron. From an audience standpoint, we need it for Aragorn, but like that's what people complain. Well, why did that scene make it in and all this? But if you read the books, it's split into two parts, and the first half of the book is their side of the story, and the second half of the book is Frodo's side of the story. So we don't know that Frodo's alive. We just know that he has that the mouth has the
armor.
Yeah.
The mithril shirt.
The mithril, yeah. We know that. And yes, it's cool to have that scene in there, but you could cut that. And have someone be like, hey, you know, we don't need the armor scene like that. You could just have like an orc be like, you don't need that crazy cool looking character. And it's a cool visual thing, and it's a movie got a movie moment. But like, and I'm less hard on that because the rest of the movie holds up and stays more true to the book than this does. But this is one of those things that, like, I'm fine with changing a book if it's going to make the movie better. And making Balin the one to talk about it with him makes the movie better. Just on a fundamental level. It makes the movie better. And it just... everything else does it, and it just... and that's where it bothers me, because it's just like... If my dumb ass can see that, why couldn't they? I'm not a film student. I'm nothing like that. I'm just your casual moviegoer who cares about this franchise, and I could see that. And I can agree with Keith. Bread there, but like
unbuttered bread, Keith.
Yeah, the book is kind of boring. And I'm fine with changing the book to make it into a movie. That's not what I'm saying is wrong with this. Is that this didn't need to be 3 movies. We didn't need to have we didn't need 3 movies for one. Like,
I'll give you that one.
Down 100% down to 2. First, like, it's just because nothing happens until the end of the second one that is really major, because Smaug lasts 50 minutes in this 9-10 hour series of movies. Smaug is 50 minutes of the 9 hours, and he's talked about the most out of everything.
What's the big bad in this movie, though?
the White Orc.
Huh.
From just an established setting. And I said, I'm cool with keeping it because he's a cool villain, sort of. I wish he wasn't all CGI, but, he's kind of cool. It matters because in the book, it matters because Dwalin is one of his best friends.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it matters. But in the movie, it makes no sense to have Dwalin do it because they've in this entire thing, they've never shared a scene talking to each other. But Balin and Thorn have shared several scenes together.
I think you've made that point already.
Yeah, but apparently I haven't to chat.
Okay.
Chat's still asking why does it matter? That's why it matters. There's no personal connection between Thorn and Dwalin that we have seen throughout the entire set of movies.
I mean, to go against Keith here. Sorry, now I'm reading the other comment. Sure, but then again, all the dwarves were upset.
Yeah. Then at that point, it doesn't matter which one talks to him.
Exactly. That's just the point that I'm at. It doesn't matter to me which one of the... Like I said, it could have been Biffer with the axe in his head who couldn't speak common talking to Thorin for us.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have cared. It would have been the same.
It doesn't matter. That conversation doesn't matter now because you don't have a character that matters having the conversation.
So yeah, there you go. I'm agreeing with you.
No, I know you're agreeing
Chat
with
might
me.
not be agreeing with you, but they don't matter right now.
No.
You can ignore them.
Not right now.
Hi, chat. We love you.
Glad you understand it.
Let's see.
And also, we don't care about the games because it doesn't matter if it's filling in holes in it because the game isn't the movie.
Yeah, which I'm trying to get through Dev's head a little bit. The books aren't the movie either, but...
No, and I know, and I have said that. I can take the movie on its own. I've explained that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you make direct comparisons to the book, because it's what the book did, but it doesn't make thematic sense for your movie to do that, then why? Why does it matter at all then? Why does this movie matter at all? It doesn't.
I was actually kind of wondering.
At all.
I was trying to figure that out too, because when I got to the end of this movie, I felt like the whole point of the franchise itself was home is where the heart is. If more people cared about home, there would be less wars in the world, essentially. As much as they care about money, there'd be less evil in the world, as was the lie. And, I was trying to think about that. If that's the moral of this whole 3-movie franchise, is that home is where the heart is, essentially. It's kind of pointless, really, if you think about it. Because, the movie ends with Bilbo going back home to his empty home, which I know is supposed to be, in a way, poetic, to where he doesn't need everything, he just needs his home. But it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like there's the message that they're being told is followed through at the very end. So, sure, he's happy
also,
just being there with
another
nothing.
Issue at the end that I will go over more.
Okay. Is it spoiler or non-spoiler?
It's a huge spoiler.
Okay. So,
for the franchise as a whole.
Okay. So, is there anything else non-spoiler about this movie? There's one specific moment where, horse riding in this movie is weird, where they look really slidey across the ground.
Yeah.
I do have questions.
Anything CGI just becomes... Also, Legolas, why didn't we have this Legolas in the other movies? Because this Legolas can do some fucking crazy-ass shit that he can't do in the other ones. I'm like, okay, where was this Legolas in the Lord of the Rings trilogy? Because we would have won way faster.
My question...
No fight matters. No, watching this one especially, no fight matters because I know Legolas is there now.
Mm-hmm.
At least in the other ones, Legolas wasn't a trump card. He had to fight for, comparing back to the elephant kill, he had to find a way to take that out in multiple steps. Climb the side of it. Cut the rope, get up, take out the elephant. It was ridiculous, and I still don't think it was needed. But compared to that, to what he does with these fucking wombats, I'm like, what the actual shit?
Mm-hmm. Like, when he's riding on the wombat, that one is like, how the hell does that happen? How is he able to get the bat to go wherever it's going? Why are these things happening the way it's happening? I have a response to Rex here in a second. But at the same time, Legolas doesn't have much screen time in the fights of the Lord of the Rings. So as far as we know, he can be this fucking badass just off screen, and we don't see it. Playing devil's advocate, because he's not the main role.
Go ahead and play devil's advocate, but it still makes me question why was like knowing that he's done these feats lowers the tension of the later movies.
I don't think so. Because even though he does some pretty amazing things, like killing 20 orcs while hanging upside down from a bat's leg, while still somehow being able to pilot said bat, sure, that's really freaking amazing.
And having it, like, how did he convince it to could grab his legs?
I don't know.
There's so many levels. Like, I would love to just do a breakdown of that scene sometime. So it's just it breaks so much.
Yeah, like, sure, he does that now. But who's to say he doesn't also do that in the Lord of the Rings movies? Like, and the difference would be just the sheer scale and power that those...
Well, then I would point out Helm's Deep. Like, yeah, he does some cool arrow scenes in the surf, which I complain about the surfs in the other one because it was just a callback to that. And yes, he's always been because if you watch him in this one, the feats he does in this one compared to the feats in the other one, like... trump everything he's done. The wombat scene alone is like, okay, what? Why didn't he just grab a Nazgul and do that shit during that fight at fucking Mordor?
Well,
or like,
I think that's a little too much.
I know, but like from what I've seen, it's just a flying elephant. Why not?
Yeah, like part of me agree. Like yes, the elves are overpowered. A lot of the things are overpowered. Like, we're going on other tangents, and I never even got to talk about like the return thing with Bilbo here. So let me do that real fast.
Go ahead and talk about that real quick.
So, replying to, yes, the movie ends with Bilbo going home because it has to have it end to his epic journey. Yes, that's how every epic movie journey ends, with the main character going home. The part I don't like is the fact that he goes home to an empty house, and we get to see it for 2, maybe 3 minutes before we flip back into modern, quote-unquote, modern time, with him being greeted by Gandalf. So there doesn't feel like there was a story or real moral of the story moment learned with Bilbo going home. He just kind of shows up.
They needed an end.
Yeah, he just kind of shows up at home after the whole thing ends. He starts putting things up, and then we jump back to modern time. And it's like, there could have been more. Like, I would have been happy with maybe another minute of him just cleaning up what was left in his house. And then, or not even cleaning up what was left in his house. Just sitting on the floor and just sitting there and being happy. I would have liked that better.
Or maybe a lone chair.
Exactly. Just something other than, all right, I'm going to start putting things back to the way they were before I left. And now nothing ever changed. Except I'm 60 years older.
Yeah. The other thing, too, is that... to the elves elves point.
Being overpowered.
Yes, the elves are overpowered, but we've seen elves do combat in Battle of Helm's Deep. Okay, and the elves didn't feel this ridiculous. I'm sorry, they feel ridiculous in this one. Like,
at times, yes.
Like the whole jumping over the dwarves and then that
was one of my favorite moments. Yeah,
it's a cool shot. But, like, we don't see a ton of casualties after that, from that part of the fight, until we cut away and then cut back. And then, like, oh no, a lot of the elves have died. And it's like, well, what happened? How did they all die? They seem to have had that pretty handled at the time. Like,
yeah,
what?
Like, I don't like how that's your complaint when later on in the movie, there's literally, oh no, we're dying, whatever are we gonna do? 13 dwarves joined us.
I have that as a note.
Yeah.
I have that as a note. 13 dwarves make a difference. Here it is. After 20 minutes of fighting, 13 dwarves make the difference.
Yeah. Like I was about to say, what are you complaining about?
What? Oh no, I'm complaining about that as well. Don't worry. That is a major complaint. Because after 20 minutes of fighting the orcs, 20 minutes of fighting this entire thing, elves versus dwarves, and everyone shows up. The dwarves show up, and oh my god,
rally to the king!
And oh my god, they win the fight!
Yeah.
And they begin to bumble their way through this fight again, by the way, like taking out the trolls and stuff like that. It's sort of, oh, catch up!
Yeah.
And I know you like that, but like during this kind of conflict, I'm sorry, we've just seen legs getting chopped off and orcs doing the whole, oh shit, man, my legs are cut off, and people getting smashed. It's a gratuitous fight at this point.
Yeah, this one...
And all of a sudden we get the bumbling.
This one I kind of agree with you. Like, this one I'll agree with you on this one, where it seems like we have this big epic setup, and then we go back to the ridiculous where, even though we've seen trolls destroy the war machines, this one war machine can kill 6 trolls in one fell swoop, and even though that we saw that there is an entire army of people chasing after this group of 5 dwarves, once one of them decides to nobly sacrifice himself, that whole army stops chasing after them.
Which, yeah, and apparently he just lived through it.
Yeah, and he lives just fine.
They make it a noble sacrifice moment that we don't see how he gets out of that situation, other than shooting that what little herd there was.
And all he says is, I'm too old for this.
Yeah. There's no tension as that begins. I'm sorry, the tension of this fight flies out the window at that point. And the other thing, too, is Battle of 5 Armies, okay? One of the armies that were in the book, do you want to know what the other army was supposed to be?
What was that?
It was the Eagles.
I had a feeling.
Not 2 different orc armies.
Yeah, I was
if
like,
I remember correctly.
Because I was reading through this, and I made sure to try and reminisce that, because I remember somebody telling me in the past, like, there weren't even 5 armies. There were elves, dwarves, man, and orcs. That was it. I was like, but aren't there 2 dwarf or orc armies?
They're still orcs.
Yeah.
Like, that's the problem. You can't tell that there's 2 different packs of orcs. Like, I'm sorry, you can't. They all look like one army. And the other problem, too, is if I remember correctly from the book, the line the Eagles are coming, he said before he's knocked out.
Oh, before he's... Yeah. That would have been better.
It's like, they just kind of ex machina up. And like, oh, we win the fight now. Eagles are here.
I mean, but that's this whole fight where it's just like, this whole movie where it's like, oh no, Gandalf's in trouble. Ah, elves show up. Oh no, this person's in trouble. Ah, elves show up. Oh no, this person show up. Ah, man shows up. Oh no, this person's in trouble.
And yes, there were 2 separate societies of orcs, but how are we supposed to tell when they look the bloody same on the field?
Like, I will give you that in a way. Like, I'm on both sides of this argument, because technically, yes, there are 5 armies, and the movie does establish, yes, there are 5 armies. But in visual storytelling, in the 5 army battle, it doesn't look like there are 5 armies. It does only look like there are maybe 4.
There needs to be some sort of visual difference between them. And also, they seem to be all listening to the same leader.
Which kind of makes sense if you think about it.
Yeah, no, it does. But then it's like, aren't they kind of just one army with just 2 different, like, groups of people?
Yeah, they're
like,
just platoons in the army.
Would the army of Rohan be multiple armies of Rohan? Because he's gathering the groups of Rohan together?
That's a good question. It's the armies of Rohan, which is now the army of Rohan. Yeah.
Just like... And I know that's a really dumb comparison to it, but, like, again, that's just what I'm thinking about here. It's just like... It doesn't look like it's a Battle of 5 armies till the Eagles show up, and the Eagles show up and just win the fight. Like, it's annoying.
I mean, I would argue that they had already won the fight by the time the Eagles showed up, or at least that's what they were trying to portray.
They won the fight that mattered for our characters, but the fight of the battle, the actual fight down low, they had not won that yet.
But that's not explained in this movie. That's the problem.
Doesn't it explain that?
No, it's not.
Yeah, it doesn't explain that at all.
Yeah, that's not explained in this movie. That's the problem. Where, like, all we know, based on what's told in this movie, is that...
Don't say the games explain it, because that doesn't matter.
Yeah, the games don't...
Yeah.
Like,
This is the...
Go ahead, Deb.
This is the movie and maybe source material, because we've talked about source material before. Like, as a way to compare it against something. But the game was made after the movie, as a side project for people to buy for the movie. You know what I mean? It's like if the Captain America game had context for the movie, I would not consider that into my review of Captain America: The First Avenger.
Yeah.
Just how I'm going to put that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I have so many notes written down on my notepad about how these things actually make sense in Tolkien lore, but in the lore of the movie, without the explanations, they don't make sense. Like, because, for instance, specifically in this movie, why do these dwarves hate each other? I know that the Gundabarg orcs, or whatever they're called, the ones that Bolg commands, are from the north. They are more powerful technically because of reasons that I can't remember. I think it's because they're Númenórean ancestors or whatever. I don't remember. It's some reason that's explained. And then there's the orcs from the east, controlled by Azog. But oddly enough, according to the movie, Bolg is the spawn of Azog. So, like, I'm assuming that means it's his son or, like, his mentor or something. So how are these two people separated? Or why is this second army that hates the first army even deciding to work with Bolg and Azog? And sure, it might be because Saruman has returned, but there's no explanation to that. All we know is that there are these two armies from two different areas of orcs coming to take over the mountain.
And it just seems normal because, like, oh yeah, orcs would work together. Like, we see, like, them scuffle with each other in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And we see scuffles with orcs versus orcs. Mm-hmm. But, like, for the most part, the orcs are pretty coordinated together. Especially when they have a single target. They seem to work really well together.
That one I'll lean back on a little bit, but...
Well, I mean, like, okay, they nearly took out Helm's Deep on their own. If Gandalf didn't show up, they won, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or, like, the Battle of Mordor. The orcs kind of won that fight if it wasn't for the fact that the ring got thrown into the mountain. Straight up. They would have won that fight. They had them completely surrounded in a death pit. Mm-hmm. Like, they were dead.
But then they decided to run away.
Yeah. Because, I mean, they had the right to run away because the earth started to swallow them whole.
Like, one thing that's fun, for instance, Dev, do you know why the 3 elven rings don't corrupt the wearers?
Not a clue.
Because it's not explained in the movies. The reason it's explained is actually both in the books and in Shadows of Mordor, because the forger of the rings, Celebrimbor, made those rings himself without Sauron's help.
And then he made the other ones with Sauron's help.
Yes, and the other ones were corrupted. The 3s for the elves weren't. So even though they were still connected to the One Ring, they weren't corrupted by the One Ring. So, but that's not explained in the movies. So.
Also, Redirex. The problem with that is that, like, yeah, I want to, like, if you're just going in to enjoy a fantasy film, fine. But if you're going in to enjoy this as part of the greater 6 movies total, or enjoyed as a Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, Silmarillion fan, there's issues with it. Which, I'm sorry, is your core audience for this movie. Like...
Yeah.
That's your target audience, and you're gonna piss them off.
Okay.
Like,
so I want to move into spoilers.
Yes, let's do it.
So can you give me popcorn?
What do you get? What do you want to give me back for your popcorn?
Okay, so Battle of 5 Armies, I will give this one also a 6.
Fair enough. I think I want to give it I'll bump it to a 5. I want to give it lower, but I don't have an excuse to give it lower. I'll say that. I'll have excuses with other stuff as a whole on this, but I won't dock the movie on its own. But problem with this movie is that bad CGI all fucking around, and just, like, the action as soon as the dwarves show up or anything Legolas related just feels like, why? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, so... I agree with you, Refrex. But that's kind of the point of what this show, really. It's like, I am a nitpicker. I criticize every small aspect of things that I can. Be it like, hey, why the hell was the hand in Paradox, Cloverfield Paradox moving when every other body part that was separated from the person wasn't moving? And like, why does that make
like
sense?
it was a what is it? Not Schrodinger's got the other the gun.
Chekhov's gun.
Chekhov's gun. It was a Chekhov's gun that never fired.
Yeah.
As well.
And like,
it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, there's a bunch of small details that like they would make a lot more sense for us in the movie, but because they're not explained, it's just kind of assumed that we know that information. But then that's the point that I'm trying to nitpick at. Like, why do we have to assume these things? Why can't you tell me? Or blah, 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 blah. There's so many different reasons why we could pick out these small details for why it's good or why it's not good. And when I watch a movie, I want things to make sense without me having to look into them. Like, there were so many different things in this movie where I had to look into it. Like, for instance, what the hell is the Arkenstone? What the hell is the gems, the white gems of...
Which are a huge plot point that aren't really explained until they don't get name dropped until this movie.
Yeah. Like the light gems of Lager or whatever. Like, there's so many things that... Like, the light gems are important because it's the main reason why Thranduil decides to attack the mountain. Because he wants those gems back. Why does he want those gems back? Yeah, but Smaug's there. So, why does he want those gems? It's never explained to us in the movie. He wants those gems because they were a gift to his wife, and she never got to get those gems because she died in battle at Gun Dubar, where the Northern Orcs are from.
I had no idea that's what was happening with those.
Yeah.
But they're a huge important thing. And the other thing, too, is you're also talking to a person who's fine with plot holes and stuff like that. Quote-unquote plot holes. Like, the rat turning on... we talked about it earlier, the rat turning on the button from Endgame. I'm cool with that because also it's slightly explained, sort of, in that, like, hey, there's one timeline that's got to work.
I hate that.
And you hate it, I know. And that you have every excuse to hate it. I find it funny, and you know what? It's whatever. Also, I don't think everyone thought that. Because given that, like, if you go to, like, reviews for this movie, they weren't pretty. 58 on Metascore on here. Or the Metascore on there. For the first one, a 66 on that one, and then a 59 on the last one. And I can pull up the Rotten Tomatoes real quick.
Like, and more specifically as well, sure, the general audience might not be looking this deeply into things, but I literally want to know why a movie chooses every decision. Like, why did they decide to light this club red? And why did they decide to light the background of this guy at the club blue? And why is he sitting in this position? And why is the camera located here? For what effects? Because I studied these things. I went to school to become a cinematographer. That's the stuff that I love about movies, is really getting down to the nitpicky, the deep dive, and what makes these things effective. Like,
and then
Dev likes movies.
Yeah, I like movies. I watch a shit ton of movies, and I just genuinely like watching movies.
Mm-hmm.
And if I care about a franchise, I'm gonna put more into it.
Yeah, I was about to say, and the only reason you get so nitpicky is because after 2 years of me getting nitpicky to you, it kind of rubs off a little.
Well, not just that. I've been nitpicky about other stuff. When I care about a movie, I'm nitpicky about things that, like, if I care about a franchise, I'll be nitpicky about it. If there's a higher quality of it that's already been predecessed. It's the same issues with Fantastic Beasts. Mm-hmm. That, like, they're trying to tie in too much to the Harry Potter movies, and they're just making bad movies.
Like, with it. Yeah. So, two things. I understand that if I had studied the lore, I would know better, but I don't want, like, as a moviegoer, why should I have to study the lore to understand the movie? Why, yeah. Like,
the movie needs to stand alone.
Mm-hmm. For one. And additionally, saying that studios can get away with lazy scenes, they will. That's part of the problem I have. I hate lazy studios. I hate that every single movie that we see nowadays is a remake or a rehash or a sequel of similar ideas that we've done in the past because it's lazy. Like, there was a video from film theory actually that came out this week, where they were discussing what they think Phase 4 was going to be of the Avengers. And the intro was they were comparing the Star Wars storytelling with Avengers storytelling, and it was like beat for beat story exactly like what they needed to be, and it explains how creatively bankrupt is the statement they put it that Hollywood movies are, at least to some people. Me, sometimes I am that person. And yes, many things so. I guess a good question then would be to you, Rithrex, because general audiences loved it, only fans were really upset with it. How would you feel?
And who was this movie made for?
Yeah, general audiences, sure, it could be made for the general audience, but then what is the general audience? Is it kids? Is it young adults? Is it adults? Is it it's there's so many different things that we can get into about the specifics here. And yes, overall, I will say I enjoyed this movie. I liked this movie to a degree. There were funny moments, there were emotional moments, there were character moments where people developed. And overall, because it got higher than a 5, because the way we rate movies here, or at least the way I rate them.
Well, the last one got a 5.
Yeah.
But
the 5s are neutral, they exist. They're okay. Anything lower than a 5 is not a good movie.
And the fact that the fact in my problem too is, especially after just watching Lord of the Rings trilogy, the fact that we went 10 the first week, 9.5, 9.5, to a highest being a 7, then a 6, then a 5.5. There is a drop in quality.
Mm-hmm. And
that is noticeable.
And specifically as well, it wasn't just fans that hated the movie, it was film critics as well. And that's what I try to be. That's what I'm emulating. I am a film critic who went to film school to critique a film the way a critic would.
Also, general audiences did not enjoy the Avatar: The Last Airbender. Do not give that movie more credit than it deserves.
Yeah, what's the Metacritic score on that one, Dev?
Oh boy. Oh, that's the wrong one. Hold on. There's 3 different ones I have to go through.
Because I know the Avatar: The Last Airbender movie on IMDb has a 4.1. Metascore, it looks like it says 20.
Yeah. And then if we pull it up on Rotten Tomatoes.
And sure, I'll give that
sit at a 30% audience score.
Wow. I feel like I'm arguing with 2 devs right now. There's just always a response to what I have to say. I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm saying on this, audience score was a 30% on Rotten Tomatoes for Avatar: The Last Airbender. Was it only reviewed by fans, or did general audiences not see that?
Okay, so enough of this. Let's actually dig in.
And we already reviewed that one.
Yeah, we're normally our show's done and we haven't even gotten to spoilers yet. So let's start talking about spoilers over all 3 movies. Just kind of wrap things up in a neat little bow before we move on.
We want to go nitty gritty with spoilers, or
we can.
Okay. I'll save my major topic for the end, which involves the ring. Okay.
Okay.
We can go over everything else before the rings.
Okay.
If you want to do that, if you have notes, and I might have notes similar to it. But my spiel is going to be about the ring. Well, then, where did people who enjoyed the movie vote? That's my question.
It's if everywhere we look up is a fan vote and a fan critique.
Because, Desolate, the Hobbit movies got, audience scores of 74, 85, and 83. But if only fans voted, then that disproves your point. I'm sorry.
And then
on IMDb, it got a 4.1 on IMDb and that's barely better than what it got on. It's 1.1 points better than what it got on Rotten Tomato.
Okay, so I'm trying to look at the things here. In the first movie, my big complaints, just with the first movie that I can spoil, let's see. The fact there's too many dwarves, dark shadows, misty mountains.
Thank you for the biddies.
Yeah, thank you for the bits. I appreciate you.
We may be disagreeing on some topics, but it's always honestly, this kind of interaction is fun because it does give us different points to talk about as well.
Oh, here's a question I have. What made Bilbo leave? I'm curious. Because in the movie, the way we see it is the dwarves show up, they ransack Bilbo's house, they tell him a sad story, then they disappear with his house clean. And then after being alone for about 5 minutes, I'll say, not in real time for us, but after being alone for 5 minutes, then he decides, you know what, I'm going to leave with them.
You want the lazy man answer?
Sure.
The call of action.
Yes. Now,
the call to adventure.
Yes, that is what the hero's journey would say it is. But what
else I can give you?
Yeah.
No.
So that's my question. They don't
show it.
Yeah, they don't really show why he decides to leave. He just sits in his house alone, and then he leaves. And it's kind of the same with when he comes back. When he comes back and the house is empty, and he puts things up, and then the movie ends. It's kind of like an abrupt choice, where sure, in the beginning, where there's kind of, when we get the 14 minutes of exposition before we get the 30 minutes of why the movie's happening exposition, in that 14 minutes
of... The whole first hour is just sitting around, nothing happening.
I wrote it down. 14 minutes is explaining Bilbo. 30 minutes after that is when Bilbo leaves. So 43 minutes into the movie, Bilbo leaves the Shire. So
keep talking. I'm going to take my jacket off, though.
No worries. So in that first bit of 14 minutes, we learn that Bilbo is a slightly different Hobbit because he asks Gandalf about adventure-y stuff and seems excited that somebody new is there. So that's the only real exposition and explanation that we have, that Bilbo's different than the other hobbits and why he would leave. But then 30, 40, however many years later, Gandalf shows up again out of nowhere and is like, hey, let's do this. So that's not really explained. There are moments in the first movie where, Radagast the Brown as a whole, he doesn't need to be in this movie franchise at all. He's interesting because, one, he helps save our group of hobbits in the first movie, in a way. He leads them into the elf home, but at first...
heavy quotes around save, because the entire time he's getting chased, he just leads them back around.
Mm-hmm.
And you could say, oh, but that was the plan, but we know we don't know that's the plan, because we don't know that there's a plan.
Yeah, it just kind of happens.
That is a plan, but it's never explained that was a plan. It was never said that was a plan. It just so happens that they found the hole that gets them to Rivendell.
Yeah, so they just did it. So there's that. And then, ultimately, by the end of this franchise, the next time we see Radagast is in Guldu whatever, when he meets Gandalf, and he somehow escapes when Gandalf is captured.
Well, he leaves, Gandalf sends him off.
Yeah, and
then goes in.
Yeah.
It is most surely
a trap. Yes. And then after that point, he comes back with Elrond and Galadriel and Saruman and saves Gandalf. And then at that point, the Tremors movies. Maybe. That's...
that could be fun.
Yeah. Okay.
The big kid's in it! In the first one.
So there's that. And then at the end of the last time we see him, he gives his staff to Gandalf. If that's his whole arc, I almost feel like there was no point to having him, which there isn't. So...
Oh, there isn't.
Radagast unneeded. The moment with the trolls in the first movie, I hated that. I genuinely didn't like that moment because it just shows how dumb the trolls are. And then it had me asking questions later on, how the hell is it possible that later in the franchises do we get to see the trolls walking around in daylight? Because in the third movie of Lord of the Rings, it happens. The explanation?
In the third movie of this series, it happens. There are trolls walking around during that giant battle. You know that blind thing that's walking around?
Yeah, that's a troll.
That's a fucking troll!
Yeah. Speaking of which, why is there a blind fucking troll? Why is that the only weird troll?
I don't know.
Okay. So, but yeah, the explanation...
Or the hammer troll? The hammerhead troll that they put the brick thing on and he's like... Yeah. That was so fucking stupid.
Mm-hmm. So there was that.
I'm sorry, like, it's super childish, and I'm sorry, like, if that's your general audience, like, don't try to so heavy-handedly tie to things, then.
But the explanation that I found when I was looking into it is, technically, they shouldn't be able to survive. The only reason why they were able to survive at the end of the third Lord of the Rings movie is because Sauron becomes more powerful as the ring becomes closer to him. So
yeah, and also he had the smoke of Mordor.
Yeah, so when the ring is in Mordor, Sauron's at his strongest until he gets the ring itself. So
then it breaks the Battle of Five Armies.
Yes, it does. So there's that. One thing that I thought was silly, which felt like they were trying to make it a reoccurring theme, was the talk of like how elf and dwarf cultures mix, but specifically around the moon. And nothing ever really follows through with that, except for like small tie-ins, where it's like these dwarves were written in moon rune. These words are moon runes, which can only be read on a certain day of a certain time of the moon. And then in the second movie... What?
Third time a year under a certain moon, and luckily enough for you,
it's right here, right now. Like, it's destiny that this is happening. They said that to give you an excuse to write it off, but it's just bad writing. And then...
yeah. But, I mean, they do kind of... It is... I think that's from the book, too.
Yeah.
That it's moon runes on there.
But still bad writing.
Hey, I'm not saying Tolkien's a genius.
Mm-hmm. But then the second movie, the only other time moon is talked about is when they are in prison, and Keely and Tariel are talking about the moon being cold and the moon actually being full of memories. And then we get to see them get to the door, and it's the moonlight that opens the door. So it's... And the part that made it worse to me is that if Keely was there, he probably could have told them that it was moonlight, because he learned from Tariel, but because he was sickened from the Morgul poison, he couldn't.
They needed to take him out because of it. Mm-hmm. And they needed to give a pointless love plot that lasts all of 15 minutes of shared near screen time.
Mm-hmm. But
if you add the when they're near each other.
Oddly enough, though, that short amount of screen time of their relationship, quote unquote, is what gives Thranduil a lot of his growth. Because in this movie, other than Thorin, I feel like he's the one that's most progressed. Because he goes from being in this egotistical, very possessive man, who elf man actually, to somebody who how I wrote it down here. He loses everything. He loses his son because of his reactions earlier on. He loses his army because he brought his army there for the gems. He loses the gems, supposedly. We don't know if he gets them back or not. So he loses those gems as well. And then he loses his perception of what he thought was real, because the love between Tariel and Keely was real. And he was like, I was wrong in this aspect too? What?
Well, the other thing too about that too is, like, his story is one of greed, and loss in the book as well, with losing his army and stuff like that. But also, like, that's what made, like, just the loss of his men is what was like, oh shit. Yeah, this needs to change.
Which, I think that's the reason why they brought in Tariel. Like, was she in the book originally at all?
No, okay. She's completely added for the whole love triangle bullshit, because they were like, oh, what if we throw Legolas in this?
They added her
in. Make it a love triangle.
I think they had to add in Legolas to add her in. Because they added her in to redefine the point that we are elves who live in this world and we need to help people. And she's the only elf who sees that. Where all the other elves are like, oh, this is man's problem.
Yes, and I agree. In that sense, but no offense, did we need that in the movie?
Probably not. No.
This story of movies is about the dwarves and a hobbit,
and then it does add like some tension and some drama, but ultimately it kind of complicates the story as a whole, I would say, because it adds in a lot of filler and spaces things out.
Oh yeah, my other thing with Legolas then, since we're on a similar topic, throughout these movies, part of my issue with him is that, like, even in the last one especially, he does the whole flying wombat upside down bullshit, which, Jesus Christ, that is a fucking issue all on its own that I could break down for a year. God, movie got a movie. But, like, even during that, like, there's inconsistency with him, because then when he gets to the top of that tower after the decapitation, which, again, how many heads, man, is on his hands? Even though they're bad guys, like, goddamn. When he's on the top of the tower, how slow he's shooting.
Yeah, there's times when he's like, all right. Okay.
But then we see in the other ones where he's like,
yeah.
There's an inconsistency with his character overall. Like, he's made longer shots quicker. Like, it's just, that's an inconsistency right there that I have an issue with. And then, apparently, he's also a master sword thrower.
He's just, I think, well, I believe the reasoning is elven weapons are magical. And if you have the intent of striking your target, it will. Like, because I know arrows do that. That one I know for a fact. The elven magic arrows strike
But enemies. They don't really explain that in the movies at all.
No, they do not. They don't at all,
and it looks ridiculous. Being, he's throwing it up. Like, that high.
Yes.
That's like
But like, I'll give you that it's a ridiculous moment, like, strength and combat wise, but I like the moment character wise, because
I can agree with that, because it's cool. He's helping a dwarf moment, and you can see that progress. Like,
especially because
you can see that progressing into what he becomes for him. Sorry.
Especially because that sword specifically was the one that he stole from Thorin the first time he ran into him, and he decides, "Am I going to give up this sword that belongs to my people to save that dwarf right there?" Yes, I am. And he does it. Well, and then he kills Bolg without it.
You know, in the books, he kept the sword the entire time.
I mean, so also in the books, Azog isn't there. Also in the books, Dane is the one who kills Azog, by the way. So.
Yeah. Like, and I'm fine with changing things from the books. But, like, honestly, Legolas didn't need to keep the sword throughout the rest of the movie, like, through these movies. Because he doesn't really use it through these. Like, he kills a couple orcs here and there.
Mm-hmm. But it's mainly those daggers that he pulls out.
Yeah, and his bow. That's what we know him for. He's not known for being a swordsman.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get another swordsman in this series. Like, he doesn't feel unique when he's using that.
I don't have that as a problem myself. I don't think the weapon they use makes them any more or less unique myself.
Well, it does from a visual standpoint. Okay.
But yes, but I don't think visuals were a problem in this.
Like, I do from an action standpoint. Like, visual, like, for an action standpoint, like, if everyone's using the same action, they all look the same or similar enough that it's tough to tell who's who unless they do a moment where, like, it slows down for a character moment, like the dwarf tug-of-war. Like, when they're in combat, it's tough to tell who's who because they're all carrying either an axe or a sword and they're bouncing it around each other.
Yes and no.
It'd be like
you said that earlier, but I feel like all the they look similar, but I could tell the difference between the dwarves. I may not know their names, but even with a fast glance, there are characteristics between them that could distinguish them.
I didn't, because also there's a bunch of CGI nonsense.
This is a weird moment where when I couldn't see a white and black dragon, I could tell the difference between the same looking dwarves.
That's fair. No, I'm not criticizing this on that sense. I'm just more saying, as someone who likes action and likes, like, I like being able to, okay, how I'll put it is this, like this. I like action in a sense that, like, if it's grand scale, I like being able to look at everything happening during the action, okay? Mm-hmm. But also, like, even if it's in my peripherals, I know who's where.
Like, okay? one of the best examples for that in the modern times, I'd say, is Aquaman, where they're fighting through Italy.
I can tell who's who.
Or even when they're Aquaman when they're fighting in Italy, Aquaman when they're fighting underwater, even though they're both underwater armies, it's very easy to tell who's who. So,
or you want to know another great one that does it is Endgame.
Endgame, yeah. I mean,
the Endgame fight, I can tell when their main character, like I can tell who all the main characters are no matter what, because they're all unique looking.
Yeah,
like,
I was about to say,
extremely unique.
That one I'm kind of not as lenient towards, because each one of those characters are designed to look differently from each of the others, and the army is designed to look as similarly as possible.
But even like I can tell different, like at least with the hero army and that, I can tell the different groups within that army. You know what I mean? Just based off how they look. Because you got and even in the villain army, I could tell like, oh, there's the Chitauri, there's the Outriders, and then there's the Black Order. Just based off of how they look. You know what I mean? Because they all looked unique from each other. Like even the villains in that movie, I could tell. Oh, that's the four-armed black Venom-looking things. Outriders. Oh, those have like the gold-plated face masks. Chitauri. I remember those. They're defined, and they're on the same side. But we have that problem with the orcs being two different groups of orcs that look identical. Like, I could even take it to that level. Like, if I can't tell that they're supposed to be, like... And yes, the dwarves, at least when they're not moving around a ton, look unique enough. But there's there's 4 red-headed dwarves running around at the same time, it feels like. Because you got Bomber and Gloin. There might be... There's another one, I think, with orange hair.
I could tell Bomber because he is the fat one.
Yes.
Biffer's the one with the axe.
Yes.
Balin's the old white hair one. Thorin's the main lead. Dwalin's the balding black hair guy.
Yes.
Who's
Ori?
Ori? What? That one I actually don't know. I believe he
was the monk-looking one.
Okay. The one with the braids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the one with like the weird bowl cut.
Okay.
The youngest with the slingshot. That's Ori. You said you already said Dory, right?
Oh.
Or here, like in this image,
like the hard part that I have about it is mainly the names. Like some of the characters we don't really get to know at all. Like when I'm looking at a picture of the dwarves right now.
Same. Is it the one with all of them and then Bilbo in the back?
No, it is not. I'm looking at the trailer, like a teaser.
Oh. I'm looking at a shot, like a still image of all of them, if you want that instead.
I don't know what you typed in to find it, so.
I just clicked on IMDb. I just sent it to you on Discord.
Oh, man, that means I'd have to minimize this to be able to open this, and then pull this over here, and then close that so I could open up chat again. There we go. Oh. Nope, that didn't work. I will have to think about it later. But looking at the dwarves that I could see right now.
The only one I'm missing is Buffer, but he's behind.
Yeah, Buffer's the one in the... I see him. He's the one who wears the one hat with the twisties, and his mustache is all twisty.
But, like, if let's say you're just looking at him in a glance, there's 3 gray-haired dwarves, okay?
Only one of them is important in this movie.
Yes. There's 2 orange-haired ones that have, like, similar orange hair. But if you go with Gloin over to the brown-haired braided one, I can't remember his name. If you see them in a group together and the lighting's different, their hairs might look similar. You know what I mean? And their styles are similar. And then you got you could also even throw in
I feel
Boffer.
But part of me likes that though. Like the fact that they're all from the house of Durin of dwarves. They all come from the same lineage in a way. They may not be relatives exactly, but
no, I agree.
Like I like that they all look fairly similar. Like
they should have similarities, but they need to be able to be unique of each other as well.
And to a degree they are. Like
with just facial hair maybe, and I'm more saying that like in the heat of the moment, if I'm paying attention to also, because like when I'm watching action again, I do like to see the background stuff happening too, because that's part of the action. You can't always tell if my eye gets glanced over here because something happens on that corner of the screen, and like there's the group of them over there. Can't always tell who everyone is exactly where they are based off of just like a quick glance, if that makes sense. It's like when I'm paying attention to action, I'm paying attention to more than just.
That's the complaint I had with the first Lord of the Rings movie, if I remember, basically, which just being able to tell where they were in position of the fight, essentially.
But you like that cave fight for some reason from this trilogy.
The cave fight I thought was one of the better ones when it came, because they're not trying to.
But you can never tell who's.
But they're not trying to establish themselves in one specific spot. They're establishing that they're constantly on the move, trying to go.
Yes, but like,
and when they're going,
there's a way to do a chase where it still feels like, because like there's several points where we see them together split, but we never see them get back together split. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They just end up split. They end up together. They end up split. They end up together. That's not how you pace action. What you do is, hey, there's like maybe there's two separate paths and they get split up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we see that they cross over each other or something like that. And then like a bridge drops and they're together again. And then there's another splits and then you have a different groups up again.
But they have spots like that at times.
No, they don't. They have one moment where they group back up together before they cross the bridge. They cut the bridge and cross.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of the time it's cut together apart. You see them on different levels.
That sounds like what you were just telling me. Where they're
but they never
apart,
get grouped together. But we don't see the splits happen, is what I'm saying. We see them together, we see them apart.
You don't see it as one long take, is what you're saying.
No, well, you don't need one long take.
But that's what it sounds like. It sounds like you want to... Well, okay, I guess, to me, it sounds like you want to see them when they're together, and you want to see in the fight when they have to separate. And then when they're in the fight, you want to see them while they're separated. And then while they're fighting, you want to see them while they're fighting, figure out how to get back together.
Or, like, even if it's just like, oh, these paths intertwine again, and they're back on the same path. Like,
they do that, though.
Something to get... But during the point when they get together and separate the first time, they're together, they're apart, they're together, they're apart. We don't see who's in what groups, because it switches sometimes. Mm-hmm. We don't see how they ended up separated, like, even if they're, like, one on their own somehow. Like, Bomber ends up on one of them ends up on their own and grabs the ladder for a moment, and then everyone shows up. Like, we don't see how they ended up in those situations to build that tension for that moment.
I guess, that one I'll give you, yes. Some of those moments,
but that happens throughout the rest of it. Like, the last time we see them, they're separated, and all of a sudden they're together to cut that bridge to have them fall off and rope around each other. The goblins.
But yeah, I think it's because that fight isn't what's important. They have the fight in there because they need a moment of action for the pacing so we can get
then why do it?
Because it has to happen. Like,
yeah, then make it good.
It was fine though. Like, sure, it's not sure. I'll say it wasn't great. I'll give you that. Yes,
it was. But if the standard for their action is what we had in the Lord of the Rings, even minor action, which you may have problems with the Fellowship of the Ring, that is so below Fellowship of the Ring.
If I was grading action only, Fellowship of the Ring would probably be the worst one in this franchise.
Bullshit.
I don't think so.
Oh.
If it was action and only the action, I do think that Fellowship of the Ring would have been the worst.
This movie only has that scene for action. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The cave scene.
Never mind the fact when they're in the forest trying to survive against the wargs and stuff. That doesn't count as action?
Wait, the wargs?
Yeah, when they're being chased by Azoth and the wargs in the forest before the eagles.
What did they it's still part of the same, like, I consider that all one part because there's never a break from it except when they get out of the cave and then it's immediately into that. There's not a break in the action. That's all one long action for the end of the movie. Because that happens immediately when they get out of the caves. There's not a break. Because also in the books, the reason why there's no break is because the goblins chase them out of the caves.
And that's what happens in this too.
The goblins don't chase them out of the caves. The wargs show up. From the white orc shows up. The goblins stay in the caves.
Yeah, the goblins
and then
are what
a new group shows up as they leave the cave.
After they get out of the cave, yes, another group takes the chase. But they were chased out of the caves by the goblins.
Yes, but in the book, the goblins continue to chase them out of the caves.
Out into the sunlight.
Out of the caves, they're continued to be chased by the goblins.
Okay.
So there isn't a break in that. Mm-hmm. It's all one long thing. Like, there's the moment where they count heads real quick, as you're released for a moment, but then it's immediately you hear the howl and they're still being chased.
Let's see. In a way, yes. But there's also the... sure. I guess technically you could count it as still part of the same fight, sure. But if that's the only fight...
And also, what was entertaining about the fight with those?
It wasn't entertaining, but it was still a fight. Like, I'm just saying, like, I'm trying to get bearings on you here. Because, like, yes, sure, the cutting away from the fight... Yes, that fighting... The cinematography in that fight wasn't good. But I liked it still. I thought it was jolly. I thought it gave us a lot of character from each of the moments in their fight and how they interact together. And I thought that was more of what was important, not the fact that it was a fight and that was in the action.
Okay, then that doesn't matter to the action, because I would take the entire fight by the river and the cave scene from Fellowship of the Ring million times before watching this fight again. Okay? Because if you're saying action, there's a difference.
Yes.
I like the action that far better because it's actually action. There's tension. There's reason. And the action in this is just them bumbling.
Yes, but that's... Sure, but...
Sure, and it can be fun.
But in the Lord of the Rings movie, specifically the Fellowship of the Ring, the action is, hey, swing, fight, cut, hey, swing, fight, cut, hey, swing, fight, cut, hey, swing, fight,
and this is, hey, swing, cut, oh, we're together, oh, swing, cut, foot, oh, cool action moment.
But we actually get to see them interacting with each other. You don't get to see them interact.
And then it cuts again.
It's still better than in the Minds of Moria. Stop yelling for a second, Dev. It's still better in the Minds of Moria when they're fighting individually. They barely help each other until the troll shows up. Once the troll shows up, then we start getting the fights with each other helping. When we get to see the orcs and everything, as soon as the orcs show up, they're always helping together all the time. And when we get to see them, we get to see that there's a translation of motion, that they're running from the left to the right of the screen. And yes, sure, it doesn't look good at all times because we can't see the individual moments of why they break up or why they get back together. But when we do get to see the moments, they make sense. And they're funny. They fit with the character. And the Lord of the Rings.
What's the character? Okay,
the character of the group together. Which, sure, it's bumbling and idiocracy, but at least it's consistent.
But we also don't know those characters at all at this point.
But it's not, at that point, I'm not talking about the individual character. I'm talking about the character of the group as a whole. Because the group is the character.
Can I counter your cave fight then?
Sure.
With my cave fight. Is that, yes, they don't fight together until the troll shows up. But also it's established that they aren't a unit yet. And then they start working together as that fight goes on. Okay?
That's the only bit of storytelling that helps.
That's building character. That's building the fight. That's building the tension. Because like you realize that these guys aren't working together yet because they don't trust each other yet. They haven't gotten there yet. But we see that character build. We see that unit, that fellowship being built in that fight.
And it's very poorly told. Because it's very cut. Troll shows up. Now they kind of help each other a little bit, but they don't really start helping until Frodo's stabbed. How did Frodo get to that spot? How did, like...
You see it. You see him get there.
Barely.
The fight.
Like, at least in this
fight...
You see
it better than you see how they get split up in this cave.
But them getting...
How do they get separated multiple times in this fight, then?
We don't see it. But that's not the point. Okay. The point is them to get back together and to get out. The fight isn't what's important.
Okay, and the point of that fight was that they worked together, they learned to work together, and they saved Frodo.
Chubby Bunny. Oh, that'd be great, Refrex.
I'm sorry. Like,
this is what we do every week.
Your problems with that fight are the things you seem to be liking about the other fight, and it's like,
because they make sense in the context of the movie that they're in. Or they don't. Because it doesn't make sense in the context of the movie that they're in.
But it does, like, how does that make sense? How does the cuts where we don't see what happens in between them make sense? Like, I get that you're trying to say it builds their camaraderie together, but I'm sorry. If I'm going to this movie because I saw the original Lord of the Rings, what is this? Like, I'm sorry. Like, if you can't have what we had during those movies drop down to this, and like I don't know how to put it. It just like it doesn't work.
I don't I think the problem you're having is tone. Like, the tonal difference between the fight in Lord of the Rings and the tonal difference between the fight in The Hobbit are completely different.
Yeah, but then they have fights that are the tone of the Lord of the Rings within the same movie, and they have fights that are the tone of this. Not in this movie, but as the series goes on. And the second movie. The entire time Gandalf is fighting at the Necromancer place, they have fights that are like that during it. But then we also get the fight at the freaking at the river where it's bumbling around, and then we get the fight with Legolas in the town. That's dark and shit. It's totally conflicted with its action.
Mm-hmm.
Just these three movies.
Like, I feel like with the original trilogy, the first movie wasn't a movie about action, so the action in that movie was the worst out of the three.
Yes, and it was building the characters that we were going to know.
Sure, but I'm not at that point. So,
no.
We'll get rid of that. The second movie was a lot more about action, and the third movie was pretty much all action, if you think about it. The second movie was about establishing the stakes between the world of man and the world of orcs, essentially. And the only way they could really translate that was through force and just the difference of cultures through the different takes that we get to see between the two. And the third movie, it was all about the war. Like, that was all that movie was about. So the action in that movie had to make sense, and it had to look great, and that's what happened. And the third movie, I thought it was the best. It all made sense, it looked amazing, it all connected to where you can get to one scene from the next, and there's no confusion. In the second movie of The Lord of the Rings, the action does matter, but a lot of that is still a bit confusing because this is a giant war, and a lot of the people in that war aren't really a part of the action, and they're not really expecting what's going on. So some of the cuts that are in there from other places that don't make sense and are chaotic work. And sure, I don't like it, but at least it works in that movie. The first movie, there's just cuts everywhere, and they're not working together. Once the troll shows up in that fight specifically, then they all start teaming up. Oh, Discord.
Hello? You froze for me.
Okay, that's fine.
For a while ago. You said the action in the second movie...
I was about to say, the action in the second movie was a little more chaotic than the action in the third movie because the tone in that was a little more chaotic, where they just weren't quite sure of themselves yet. So, action in that makes sense. The first movie, I didn't like the action because even when they were supposed to be working as a unit in The Lord of the Rings, like at the very last fight at the riverbed when Frodo and Sam split up, like, we know that they're being overrun with orcs and they're near a river. But at the same time, we don't know where Aragorn is in comparison to Boromir. We don't know where they are in comparison to the river. And we're constantly jumping between those three parts. But it's still hard to tell where they are in comparison to each other. And what's going on. Yet we're supposed to feel this tension of, oh, these orcs are coming and they're going to take the hobbits. But it's hard to tell where they are and how they relate with each other. In this movie, in the first Hobbit movie, sure, the cuts are bad, but the cuts that we do see and the moments that we do see, I think explains all of the action that we see. Every time when something happens, like an orc falls through the floor, sure, we don't have to see the dwarves going around where that orc fell through the floor, but we still see him fall through the floor. Something might move in the way. We don't see it at one point, but they still get separated. That sucks, yes. I'm sad that we don't get to see that. But the moments that we do get to see, I feel still fit with the tone of the movie. And I still like the way it was shot together, where it feels like they connected. It still feels like they're still moving progressively to get to a goal. And it felt like they were one group. And sure, I may have...
But do we care about them? That's my problem. I don't.
Why are you watching the movie then? Like, if you're already an hour and a half into this movie and you still don't care about the dwarves, why are you watching the movie?
I care about a handful of them.
Okay.
That's the problem. Like, there's select ones that I've gotten moments with that I care about now. Boffer, Balin, Thorn.
Okay.
Those are the three that we've had moments with so far in this movie, and we're at the tail end of the movie.
Technically, we also had a moment with Dwalin, but it was barely existent.
Yeah, it's at the beginning of the movie when he walks inside, which is an hour into the movie when we finally get introduced to the dwarves. Which is another problem about an hour into the movie is when we get introduced to the dwarves. So an entire hour of this movie isn't built to caring about the rest of these characters. I don't care about the action in this because I just see these guys kind of CGI. Like, I know this sounds dumb, but they're kind of CGI bouncing around through this fight, Three Stooging their way through it. Oh, ladder, drop on top of them, kick them off,
and it's
cut this, and then they rope around the thing.
And it's so absurd that you can't take it seriously, essentially. And it ruins the tension.
I know it's not trying to take itself seriously, but also, yeah, like, action is supposed to have tension to it.
Would you have...
That's what action is.
Then, random question. Would you have preferred if they just cut out the dwarf scene and just stuck with Bilbo the whole time in the Goblin Mine?
No, because it's part of the movie. It's part of what was supposed to be there.
Okay.
You're supposed to see their escape. What I'm saying is that, like, there's a better way of doing that. Like, because if you watch it, I honestly think this is what happened. Okay? Some of the scenes that were cut where they're together and where they're not, I think were supposed to be cut differently.
Okay.
Some before they split, some after they split, some while they were split. Not cut back and forth, back and forth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that breaks that breaks what's happening. Like, that breaks, like, who's with who at that point. Because you see them constantly together, constantly apart, constantly together, like, apart. Like, they keep bouncing apart, like, bouncing, essentially, on the plane. Because, like, if you also see the scenes where they're separated, there's two planes. There's the lower and the upper.
Yeah.
And that's how those are always cut. But then they're together, then they're apart, then they're together, they're apart. And it just, it like...
And you don't see the moments when they get to separate.
But also during those, it's previously established of this world, because, like, again, this takes place in the same world as Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
The action of it, like, Gimli doesn't fight like that. And he's a dwarf.
I mean, all the dwarves, when they get into the war setting, don't fight like they do.
No.
They're the only ones who fight that way.
Yes. And so, like, I get that it's supposed to be more camaraderie. Yeah. But it breaks tension.
My guess, actually, is probably in the first movie, we get to see them bumbling and buffling around. And that's what happens in the movie and in the books. And my guess is that general audiences, we'll use that term, liked it. And through critiques and through the grapevine, they probably thought, hey, what if every single time the dwarves fight, they fought that way? And so they went from the second movie to the first movie, or first to the second movie. And then from there, they're like, from the second movie to the third movie. The fans love the way they fought then. Let's do it again.
My only counter to that would be, I believe these were all filmed back-to-back.
It's possible.
If I remember correctly, hold on. Battle of Five Armies 14, Desolation of Smog 13, I think. Yeah, it would have been my senior year that I went to 2012 when I went to see the thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, which is definitely the mentality of a lot of Hollywood movies.
But no, these were filmed back to back to back. So there was no critique or praise for it before that. They would have had these all filmed by then.
I don't think they were all filmed. Like,
yeah, they did what they did with the Lord of the Rings because that was their success.
Well, no, I mean, like, yeah, I understand how filming works. I don't think they did it like they did Avengers Endgame, where they filmed Endgame and Civil War at the same time. I mean,
yes, they did.
Sorry,
behind the scenes, they did that.
Okay, then let me reiterate. It still takes a year for the movies to come out, and then they can still do reshoots after the first movie comes out for editing, and it still takes months to edit, so it's possible that they could have got the audience reactions to do it. So, sure, it happened really quickly, but who knows? You could be right, I could be wrong. That's the same thing.
But the other thing, too, that I'll say is, as it goes on, when we get different, like, when the action doesn't stay consistent throughout these three movies, and even within the same scene, like Battle of Five Armies,
but it stays consistent between who's fighting throughout the whole thing. Like, if the elves are fighting, they're twirly and they're floaty. If the dwarven army is fighting, they're stout and they're blocking. If our 13 dwarves are fighting, they're bumbly and bouncy. Like, they're always consistent with what they've established with the individuals.
The individuals are consistent. I'm saying the theme of a fight, okay? The theme of the action in that moment, okay? Isn't that. Like, the Battle of Five Armies, okay? The theme of that fight is that it is war, and it's, like, even though it's all CGI mess, through it, you have a lot of moments of just, like, these dwarves, these men, and these elves are getting slaughtered.
Mm-hmm.
You see that. You see them getting crushed by trolls, killed by orcs, and getting slaughtered, and it is dark for a moment. But as soon as the 13 get out there, none of that happens. Mm-hmm. None of that tension is there anymore because they're out there.
Mm-hmm.
And as we've been established from the previous two movies, is when they're in action, they're essentially immortal.
Yeah. I'll give you that much, yes. When they come into action, the stuff that they do is ridiculous and makes them immortal.
Well, and it breaks the tension. Like, I'm sorry, like, action is supposed to have tension.
I feel like that's the point, though, because they don't start fighting until, like, in the fights, until the mood and the motion start to swing into the positive sides. Like, I think that's the point of it all, where, sure, oh, it's deep and it's dark and depressing. It's supposed to feel that way. And then when the dwarves show up, the mood completely changes because that's what happens. The mood of the war completely shifts. And it's like, sure, kind of in retrospect, you think about it, sure, 13 dwarves change the way the war works, and that doesn't make sense. But at the same time, morale changes, and because the morale changes...
I agree with that. Like, morale can change.
The war can change as well.
Yes. Well, it's like the Battle of Rohan, okay? Or like the battle when Rohan enters the Battle of Mordor, or for Gondor, okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the mood changes because, oh my god, Rohan's here.
Yeah, cool. It doesn't feel tense anymore.
But they were still real about that fight because, yeah, Rohan's here, but also they got fucking elephants.
That doesn't happen in, like, if you're going beat by beat, oh my goodness, we're all going to die. Gondor showed up, or Rohan showed up, yay! Oh no! Now Oliphant showed up. Oh god!
Hey, guess what is showing up when they get out? The 13
ghost.
Show up. Yes, but guess what? When the 13 get out there, guess what shows up? That second army. We don't see how that second army affects anything because we don't see anything that second army does because they're getting nothing happens with them. We see them marching and that's it. We don't see that second army actually get to the fight.
Yeah, as far as we know, that we never get to see the second army fighting.
So then, that tension never happens. That rebuild of the tension, and then the Eagles show up. The battlefield's already won at that point. Why are the Eagles showing up? The Eagles don't matter at that point. We've already won.
Yeah, that's not what I'm arguing about, though. Sorry, I don't mean arguing. I don't think that that's the point at that point. Like, the army, the army war is over, essentially, as soon as the dwarves decide that they're going to go after Azog. Which ultimately kind of sucks, because it does shift the tension from the battle of the war to the battle of the individual people. Which, as soon as the individual people battle fight ends and Azog is dead, it essentially ends the war for the battle for everybody. Which does suck, because it changes where we were looking at. But
also, worms showed up in that movie.
Yeah, that was something I wanted to ask. I was going to question.
Not in the book.
No. Yeah, it's not in the book. Why those worms never a problem anytime else for the dwarves ever?
The other thing I'm going to say then is also Asgard goes out like a bitch. Also, that fight. Okay, I have multiple issues with how Asgard's taken out. Okay, one, there's the moment where he falls into the ice. Okay, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that one felt stupid to me.
Hey, I literally wrote this down. What a lame way to kill the villain of 3 movies. Oh, wait. And I went, never mind, what a boring duel. Because it happens, it's got 3 moments. It's the fight, falls on ice, then he stabs with the foot right, and then he goes over. Okay, so when he's on top of him and he has the blade like this,
blocking.
Right?
Yeah.
why does he let himself get stabbed? And if you're going to say, because he needed to pull it out to stab like this, right? Well, what if he did this?
Yeah.
Oh my god, he's off of him, and at worst he loses an arm!
My guess is the guarantee that you can kill him by bringing him closer. You know, because that blade is attached to him. Okay. So if that blade is in him, you can guarantee that he's not going anywhere. Which...
Fair.
Go ahead.
And then, my counterpoint to that is, then when Azog gets thrown off of him, there should be a gash. Because he didn't pull up the blade. He rolled off. So there should be a gash. And thus, they're both dead in that moment. But we get the fucking long-ass 5 minutes of Thorin walking afterwards. The dude's dead.
He died of blood
sorry.
loss.
I don't give a shit. That's through the heart.
Like, it was through, like, his sternum. Maybe down here, actually.
You don't got that much time after that, dude. Like, he's walking around and stuff. His body, he wouldn't be walking after that.
Yeah. It's weird, like, hearing these complaints. Because, like, I like hearing them from you, Dev. Don't take it that I'm not listening and, like, I want you to stop talking. But it's like, that's too real for this fantasy movie.
But it wasn't for other fantasy movie of this franchise, for the other three.
I mean, Boromir got shot 3 times in the chest and kept fighting before he died.
But that's different, if that makes sense. Because it's not a gash wound, is what
I mean, neither was the one that he got. He got stabbed, and that's it. He wasn't gashed.
But when you see him roll off, his sword goes like this! It's a gash! It's a slash through him. Boromir, there's a difference between a piercing wound and a slash wound. Mm-hmm. Huge difference, because a slash wound is more dangerous. Pierce wound, if the blade is still there, the arrow, you could fix that sooner, right? Mm-hmm. Or you have more time. Like, yeah, he's got 3 freaking arrows. He's gonna have a little bit more time, but the 4th one will put him down. Because he's at that point losing too much blood and internal bleeding.
Or how about this? When Celeborn or Ithil whatever is on the wall in Lord of the Rings 2 and Helm's Deep, and he's axed in the back of the head, and he's still alive to have Aragorn hold him in his arms.
Yeah, but he's not walking around.
He's still axed in the back of the head.
It was in the back more. And he still dies within 2 minutes, maybe a minute.
We don't know how, Sorry, the door opened and I was confused. It was a cat breaking in. Hi, Chloe.
Thorin walks around for a good 4 minutes, and then we get Bilbo walking over to him as he's on the ground. I'm just to counterpoint your counterpoint.
To counter the counter. That's all we ever do is this is why your argument's wrong.
No, that's fair. But I'm more saying that All right, should we move on to my last thing? Because we're going to be at this forever. We go over everything.
Let me see. One more. I was wondering if there's one more. Oh, one thing that I actually kind of liked was in the second movie when the ring falls onto Bilbo's hand. I thought it was too much of a callback at first, where it was like, oh, look at this. And then it pulls to a different angle for when it lands on his hand. And it doesn't land perfectly. I actually really like that. When we watched the movie, and you said, I don't like that. They did it better in the first movie. Yes, they did. They did it a lot better in the first Lord of the Rings movie. And I think that was the point, because it was not destined for Bilbo to have the ring. That's just me, though. Because
But he is, because the ring wants to get out of there.
Yeah.
That's my other thing.
Yeah, the ring, I like how it soars, and you get to see it as it's landing on his finger, but then in the Frodo Lord of the Rings version, it lands and just swings and goes right on. But in the Hobbit version, it bounces off 3 or 4 fingers and then eventually settles onto the right finger.
Also, didn't like how Legolas went and was told to go find Strider. That was dumb as shit.
That one I didn't like as well either. I both didn't and did, because it explains.
Well, it's gratuitous at that point.
Yes, that one was gratuitous. It's very heavy-handed. Yes, we're alluding to Lord of the Rings, but at the same time,
you'll have to find out his name for yourself.
Yes, that's the only reason it explains why he knows who Aragorn is in the first movie. Because as far as we know it as an audience, he doesn't know of Aragorn, and then suddenly by the time we see him, we know of him. So,
also, real quick, why do the men care about the death of the King Dwarf? He was a dick to them. But they're...
Well, at the end funeral?
Yeah. Why are they caring? He was a dick to them. He was never nice to them.
I don't know.
Except for at the very end of his life.
My guess is because... Well, the assumption is because after Thorin dies and Dane becomes the king of Erebor, Dane actually gives the humans 1/14 of the treasure in Helm's Deep or in Erebor. So they have to be nice and appreciate the dead king, but maybe. It's not explained in the movie. So
I said goodbye, nameless dwarves, and Balin, Dwalin, and Boofer.
Oh, that reminds me. Bifur.
Go ahead.
And his axe. In the extended edition, he loses his axe to an orc during a fight with Bofur and Boofer or whatever his name, or Bonbird. God, I'm trying not to make fun of their names this movie. Like all the other movies, I was making fun of them. Bomber, Bifur, and Bofur were fighting an orc. Bifur headbutts the orc and the axe gets stuck in both their heads. Bofur pulls on Bifur and then they eventually push him over to a cliff where Bomber then grabs the orc and pulls the orc and the axe out of Bifur's head. And then Bifur can talk again. The question I have is in the theatrical version where that is not shown and we get to see the lineup of the hobbits before we leave. Does Bifur still have his axe in his head?
I don't know. I don't remember.
I think he does, honestly, because it's not hard to put in.
Just CGI'd it?
Yeah. But...
okay. So, we talked about it in the beginning of this. The fact that Gandalf has the Ring of Fire. Mm-hmm. When the fuck did he get that? Why does he have that? Whatever. But, at this point, we've officially accounted for the 7 rings of dwarves, mm-hmm. the 9 rings of men, and the 3 rings of elves. Okay? And Gandalf ends this by being like, I know you have a ring of power. Well, Gandalf, what ring of power could that possibly be at that point? Huh. You didn't think to maybe, when Saruman goes, hey, we need the ring of power to kill him, and go, oh, well, I know where one is. Let's see if it's that. And apparently he has to do research to figure out which one it is, even though he, out of everyone, knows where they all are, because that one was taken... that Thrain had. Mm-hmm. We know that.
Yeah.
We know he has the Ring of Fire. We know Galadriel has the Ring of Light. We know what happened to the rest of the Dwarven rings, and we definitely know where the 9 rings of men are because we just saw them all raised from the dead. We know where all the rings are. Gandalf, what the fuck? you just let the Hobbit take the Ring of Power, and then to go, oh man, I must have forgotten what ring this is. By the time we get to the first Lord of the Rings movie. I'm sorry, but what the fuck? That breaks everything at this point.
It does.
Because it's pure negligence.
By the way, fun fact, the scene where Gandalf goes to the library to learn about the ring is an extended edition scene, not in the original movie.
Yes, but he leaves to do research, is what he says. Mm-hmm. To figure out what's like to figure things out.
Yeah.
Which it can be assumed if you watch the theatrical cut without that, when Gandalf comes back, that he figured out what ring it was. And why it's a problem.
Yep.
You can discern that without that scene. Mm-hmm. With this, why does he leave then to do anything when he obviously should know what ring it is then? Why would he leave it there in the Shire when he knows?
You want to know the lore answer?
Sure.
Because Gandalf, one of the Maiar, has been commanded by the Valar to stop Saruman, but not directly. He can't use his powers or directly interfere with the War of the Ring.
Then what, was Saruman not told to do that?
He's going after... Saruman is on a different quest in Middle-earth. I don't know what it is.
But if he was told to stop him, wouldn't Saruman, who just went like, hey, I'll figure out how to solve this issue under your idea, right? Mm-hmm. Be like, hey, we need to find the Ring of Power. He would probably ask Gandalf.
I mean, probably, yeah. I mean, no, because then at that point, he's using his power to directly influence the War of the Ring. Like, the way he's doing it right now is, sure, he's indirectly influencing. He's not telling them an exact answer at any point in time. He's letting the ring bearer
decide. Then give him a fucking riddle. That's Gandalf's M.O. I'm sorry. There's a way around this being like, well, I mean, I heard they could be in Little Hills. And just peace out. Like, it's a riddle. Little Hills. I wonder what that means. Figure it out. Oh, wait. Shirelings are little, and they're in hills. Hey, figured out the riddle. Gandalf didn't directly tell me where to go. Way around it! But apparently it doesn't matter, by the way, when we get to the Lord of the Rings.
Nah.
Because he's directly influencing the ring!
Yes and no. He's not using his powers on the ring. He's not using his powers to get the ring from where it is to Mordor.
I'm calling bullshit on that one.
How so?
Because he uses his powers to scare Bilbo into leaving the ring there, okay? He's then using his powers during their, like, from point A to point B. Light is a power. I'm sorry, but we're going to count that as a power.
That's not directly affecting the ring in the quest, though. Like, well,
it's
sure,
getting it from point A to point B.
But it's not literally being like, I'm going to use my power to take this and go to Mordor. Like,
no, but
that's the specification.
Okay,
like,
this is as direct is without being the one to hand deliver it.
Yes, that I'll give you that. But
I'm sorry, that would fall under my definition of directly influencing the Ring of Power. That would fall under directly influencing where the Ring of Power goes.
I mean, no. Like, I think of it more as he's helping the ring bearer, and the ring bearer is deciding where it's going.
Yes, no, and I see that, but the ring bearer is still making that decision, but he's still, he is...
Like, using the light
guiding.
Is, sure.
But he's still guiding, he's still essentially... Yes, but his guy, Frodo asks him which way to go half the time.
Like, Gandalf has a plan. Gandalf knows the way to do it. He theoretically knows how time can flow, similar to Elrond, because he is all-powerful. So, his quest, though, is to not directly influence the ring and all that stuff. So, when he uses the light to...
Yes, okay, that's fair. I'll give you that. I'm more saying that, like...
And when he...
Personally, this falls under my version of direct.
And, like, when he stops the Balrog, sure, I would take that as the most direct course of interfering with the ring. Because he uses...
And he shouldn't tell Frodo left or right at the beginning.
Technically, no. But he's not using his powers at that point.
No, but he's using his knowledge, which is power. Boom!
Now you're just being literal. I mean, they never say knowledge is power in this movie. What is that? Saying, video game lore?
It's like it's being as directly responsible for where the ring goes, without being with the negligence of being like, well, I didn't exactly say where to go.
Yeah, which that's what Gandalf was doing. Like he was I can't.
I'm sorry,
but it's not explained.
But again, then why not just give that stupid riddle I came up with? Because that's about as like baseline he seems to be doing as well already to get it from point A to point B, anyways. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yes and no.
Like he could have just given them a riddle to be like, oh well, the ring may be in the small hills.
But like
the ring is located here.
The only problem with that is Saruman would have to care, and Elrond and Galadriel would have to care. And
they seem to care by the end of this.
They seem to, but then when we get to the Lord of the Rings, Elrond doesn't care about the world of man. Galadriel doesn't care about the world of man. Because
they are allowed to leave now.
Yeah.
I don't blame them for bailing. But were they?
Yeah.
It's never explained.
It's not explained in this movie, but it's already happening in Tolkien lore.
Well, then they should show something like that so that we know that they don't care. I'm sorry, because it seems pretty much like, oh shit, we should care at the end of this.
And then in the 60 years difference, they don't care anymore. The immortal beings have stopped caring about the world of men. And, like, specifically, I think the idea was Saruman said that he was going to figure it out and handle it for everybody. And then he ends up getting corrupted by the Palantir.
Yeah.
So,
but, like, you would think he would take counsel when, like, even if he was, because you'd figure he'd figure out the answer before he gets that thing, right? Mm-hmm. You'd think he'd take counsel with the light, the Council of Light, right?
You would think so.
But. Which would be able to get an answer out of it. Because Gandalf could just give a fucking riddle. Could be even more challenging than what I came up with. Doesn't matter. You can still give him a riddle, right? Because that's not directly giving him the answer. That is giving him a question to figure out, essentially. And it could work for the theme of the movie since, the ring ends up in Bilbo's hands because of a question in the first place. But
plus, the first movie has 5 minutes of riddles.
But, like, there's just... Because Gandalf knows where the Ring of Power is, it opens too many questions for the series as a whole.
I mean, I'll give you that in a way. Like, I want to play it off myself as Gandalf has a sneaking
This is my rat.
Yes. Like...
This is my rat.
I'll give you that one. Then. I won't ask any more questions then.
And also, like, he doesn't have a sneaking suspicion. He should know, because he's accounted for the rest of the rings.
Like... Does Gandalf know Bilbo's using magic?
Yeah, because he says it at the end. He's like, I know you have a ring of power. And Bilbo's like, I don't know what you mean.
Do you think he just trusts the Bilbo more than he suspects?
No, because guess what? When Bilbo turns his head away and Gandalf looks away, he gives the Gandalf nose look.
Then maybe he thought it was better in the hands of a hobbit who was never going to leave his home again.
Maybe. And fine, but again, it just raises more questions as the power of Mordor is growing over these 60 years. Why no action is taken? Because even because they know by then also Elrond knows that you need to destroy the ring to beat Saruman, right? Because he says it. So obviously they know that information. How to defeat Sauron.
It says here, I looked this up, Gandalf also said that he had no right to take the ring from Bilbo, and that he could not have done so except by using force at the time, which would have broken Bilbo's mind. And this was a fundamental difference between Sauron and Gandalf, because Gandalf wanted to wish Bilbo a happy and healthy life, and knew that he wouldn't give up the ring. So he just waited. That's what it says here.
That's so dumb. And even if that's Tolkien lore, that's so dumb. Because I don't know if in the books he knows. I don't know if that's Tolkien lore or if that's movie lore. So that's movie lore makes sense for movie lore. It's still dumb as shit. It's pure negligence at that point. Sorry. Especially because by the time the 60 years are up in between these two movies, Elrond says we need to destroy the ring. Because he knows how to beat him.
Apparently, and this is another debate, someone else says another in-universe explanation could be that he doesn't know it's the Ring of Power, the One Ring. He could have just thought it was another random elven magic ring.
But he says, I know you have a ring of power.
Yeah.
That's pretty definitive to me. Unless I misheard him, which I will pull it up if I misheard him. It's not that hard to pull it up since we had to pay for these fucking things. Thank God the second two were on sale. I will say that.
Oh, they both were on sale? I did notice the second one
was
on sale.
Yeah, the second one was on sale. Thank God.
Yeah, it says here that he did not realize it was the One Ring, but if he did, then he was too nice to take it from him. Yeah, it just says the one explanation that kind of makes sense is he's just too nice to forcefully take the ring away. All the other explanations are he just didn't know it was the One Ring. He thought it was a magic ring.
I believe it is an extended cut where he says, "I know you have a ring of power." So that not knowing makes sense because also he doesn't know where the dwarven ring is in the regular cut, theatrical cut. But in the extended cuts, which is what most people are going to watch once it's released, because it's what people do. People tend to usually watch the non-theatrical cuts when they're available.
According to another person here, it says that he did not know it was the One Ring. He suspected it, but he had no solid proof until later in life when Bilbo said it was his precious. And he knew the precious word was what was important. He's like, that precious is a magical term. That's a darker magic than I would think. And yada blah 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 blah. So everywhere I look, it's just.
But he knows.
Yeah.
But I don't think people are accounting for the fact that he knows where all the rings are at that point. There isn't a missing elven ring, to my knowledge. Because Gandalf has the Ring of Fire, Galadriel has the Ring of Light, and I think someone else important has the last Ring of Elves. Which also, then what happens to the Ring of Fire once Gandalf falls?
I think he still has it by the end of the... he still has it. When he's Gandalf the White, you could see it on his hand in the forest with the tree ants.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, I don't know. It just breaks things for me, and I'm not a fan of it. You know what I mean? Like, just don't have that scene in the extended cut even. Like, I'm sorry. It raises questions that people on the internet have to try to figure out. Because you didn't put a definitive answer in.
There's a thing here that says it's like narrative theory, and it says here the real reason that it wasn't decided in the Hobbit that this was the Ring of Power is because at the writing of the Hobbit, this wasn't decided that the One Ring was going to be the main focal point of the story.
No, it wasn't, because it was the story was made before the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it was if I remember it right, it was the Hobbit was the first one he wrote. Then he wrote the Silmarillion, and then after he wrote the Silmarillion, he wrote the Lord of the Rings.
If I remember correctly, yes. Which works out, but so like and like, yeah, like, and it makes sense from the sense of the books, right? Because Gandalf has to figure out that it was the Ring of Power. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't make sense for the movies. Because why does Gandalf go to figure out that it's the Ring of Power? Because if you go into the extended cuts, this breaks the reason. Like, you have no reason to watch the extended cut of Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring now, other than a couple of added scenes, because that one scene is entirely pointless. Because Gandalf already knows where the Ring of Power is. At least it's too nice about it.
At least it's only one scene rather than the whole movie.
But this breaks the next three movies.
It breaks one part of the next three movies. It doesn't break the whole...
Why let him raise an army for 60 years? When you have the answer right there.
Maybe they didn't think he was powerful enough to raise said army. Like, apparently, what they had thought, because I had looked this up as well. I know it's not in canon, so this doesn't help the story, but spoilers are spoilers, so whatever. They had thought that even though they had exiled him from where they were, that he was still too weak to do anything. Like, once they had made him leave Goal, whatever, they sent him back to Mordor, and they figured that he'd just be trapped there.
Yes, fair, because you also had the Rangers on the wall. But what happens after the Rangers lose the wall? The wall being lost wasn't super close to the time of the Lord of the Rings, was it not? It was years before that.
Let's lose the wall. I don't know.
Because that was the beginning of Shadow of Mordor. Yeah. When did the beginning of Shadow of Mordor happen? That little part where they fight on the wall where you're ranger character and you lose all your friends and family.
I feel like that was a lot earlier. Because...
Like before The Hobbit?
I thought so.
In which case, that should have been raising questions! No, we are not. I'm not acknowledging Captain Planet right now. No.
He highlighted it twice? Okay.
No.
Which, like, I played all of the original Shadow of Mordor, and I thought that game became way too easy once you could take over the enemy generals. Like,
when did the Shadow...
Takes place in a 60-year gap between the events of The Hobbit. Okay, so it does happen in between those 2 years.
Shouldn't that raise some questions? Because isn't that tied into the movies? Those games?
A little bit, yes. Celebrimbor is in those games, and he explains the creation of the movie of the rings in the Second Age. Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry, I was reading something about a voice actor. The voice actor for Gollum in the game was Liam O'Brien, which is one of my favorite voice actors.
Nice. Yeah, I'm just saying. It just. You banish him to Mordor and then you lose Mordor. Is that not going to raise questions? that need answers?
There are no answers.
Like, it's just... I don't know. That's I think, like, that right there, that end note, is what ruins the rest of this for me. Because this whole thing, that's almost the last note, right? Besides the last note that you don't like, which is him going to his home. Is essentially that this was all about the fact that Bilbo gets the Ring of Power. Was this story. And how it gets to the Shire, and then ends up in Frodo's hands. That's what this story was about. Which was not what The Hobbit was about. This movie series is setting up Sauron to Mordor and the Ring of Power to the Shire. Doesn't set anything else up other than Legolas, which is completely unnecessary. And it doesn't do anything else major for anyone else.
So, it says here that there's a
thanks for the biddies.
Sorry. There's a discrepancy between the game and the movies in the lore. Because it's in the lore, it was well before The Hobbit, before Gondor started losing the manpower to station defenses at the outer keeps. And it says here, the Rangers of Ithilien patrolled a strip of land a few days' journey south of the gate, just west of the Mountains of Shadow. But before Sauron repossessed Mordor, Gondor didn't have the manpower for such a guard. The Black Gates were far too dangerous to have anybody standing post.
That's Tolkien lore?
Yes.
Not movie lore?
Not movie lore. So, in Tolkien lore, there wasn't enough people even in Gondor to help defend the Black Gates.
Yeah,
but
that makes sense.
In the video game, there was more than enough people.
Because also that takes place in the movie universe.
Technically, yes.
I rest my case.
I mean, I don't know if... Like, I'm just going to say yes on the last part. I genuinely don't know if it's supposed to connect.
I think it does because Gollum is identical to the version that you see in the movies.
Yeah. The question I guess I have is, in the lore... Unless I don't remember in Shadows of Mordor that Gollum was captured. I don't remember that. So
I didn't play enough of either of them to know.
Yeah, so it must have been the other Shadow, the sequel, where Gollum was captured then. It's where he gives the information of where the ring is. Because in the Shadows of Mordor, or whatever game it is, the first one, you are partnered with Gollum, and he helps you talk to Shelob and all these other orcs and people. So
Yeah.
At some point there, he gets captured.
All right. I'm done ranting for right now.
All right. So, I've got news then. I've got nothing else to talk about in spoilers, I don't think. Let me double check.
I have a lot of other notes that I wrote down, which are just kind of repeats of what we discussed.
Yeah.
But it was a lot. It was 4 pages of me just bitching.
Lots of plot armor.
Oh, how did the blind troll get all the way to where, like, they shot it in the head?
Don't know. The last time we see it, it fell in the river, and then suddenly it's climbing on top of a mountain?
Uh-huh.
Gollum. Nah. Hey, listen.
Also, Elf Girl said fuck physics as well, and then Legolas said double fuck physics, because apparently landing on your feet means you can push off of falling bricks.
Yeah, that one was, like, if he didn't look so floaty, I might have liked it more. Like, they've done running up falling bricks a lot better in other movies. I guess it was supposed to be like a magical thing, but whatever.
He flew upside down.
He flew upside down. Anything else in here? I thought it was the big thing that I wrote down. My least favorite part was honestly in the third Hobbit movie, where I wrote it down. Elf Machina. Galadriel shows up. Double Elf Machina. Elrond shows up. Wizard Machina too? Because Sauron and Radagast show up as well.
Well, I also had, why Galadriel? With 3 question marks next to it, because it was just like, there were multiple moments where, like, Galadriel does, like, the darkness thing. I'm like, God damn it. Like, her showing up there, like, she's not a warrior.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense for her to be in such a dangerous place, especially with a ring of light on her, which is dangerous to have that out and about. So, again, also, why the fuck does Gandalf have that walking around all over the place? But, you know, different question for different times. But I also had, where was it?
What was his name?
I had the, when we talking about the trolls, I had trolls ain't shit now, question mark, question mark. And then I had several question mark, why Alfred?
Yeah, I don't like Alfred.
Cut him. Cut it. I had several of them. Like, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 question marks next to the first time I wrote why Alfred, right? And then his death scene, I'm like, why Alfred?
Oh yeah, I wrote that in here too. Alfred Ex Machina.
Because, what the fuck? Like, that stupid coin. By the way, that weight would have already gone down.
Yeah, but it was the momentum of the top that really pushed it.
Yeah, not the momentum of the fall.
Nope. They just got to build up that tension, you know?
Oh, that's not tension, that's tomfoolery. There's a difference.
Okay, one thing one more side tangent since you mentioned it. I just want to say it because I looked into it. I was like, why does Gandalf have the Ring of Fire? Apparently, the Ring of Fire used to belong to Glorfindel, which is another high elf, who died in the War of whatever, in the Second War, Age of Man or whatever. He died at some point, and he was the ruler of the Ring of Fire. But after he died, Gandalf received it from Galadriel for safekeeping. It is not believed that Gandalf uses the power of the Ring of Fire, because he is a Maiar, and he is extremely powerful as is. So, It is only believed that Galadriel is as powerful as she is, because one, she's ancient as fuck, but she has her ring, and the two together make her almost as powerful as Gandalf, I guess. Without the ring.
He could have probably used it against the Balrog, right?
Yes, especially because Balrogs are also Maiar, but they're fallen Maiar. So they're evil wizards, essentially.
It just raises so many questions.
Yeah, apparently originally when Balrogs were written, they weren't... But what about Gollum Ex Machina? Was there Gollum Ex Machina in the third movie?
At the end of the last movie. Because if it wasn't for Gollum, everything would have failed.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But we also said like that it makes thematic sense at least. That greed's what killed the ring. And that's powered the ring for so long.
Mm-hmm. All right, so if we're done with spoilers...
Yeah, let's hurry up.
Yeah, all right, we're heading into news.
I want to finish my food.
Okay, so news. There's 3 things I wanted to talk about for news. First thing, keeping it simple, I believe it was... I don't remember what my buttons were. I think it was this button. Have I transitioned to the stream? My window screen on the stream?
Well, nope, you are at the Hobbit right now.
Was it that button? Nope. Was it this button? Was it that button? That button? That button! There we go. So,
that reminds me of my last note, by the way, which was, scroll to it. Can't wait to see where this series goes with the new Amazon original series.
So that's where we're at. Amazon original series. Everything we know so far. Turns out, this is a prequel series going to take place in the second age of man. Quite possibly during the forging of the rings.
Okay, that's interesting.
Right?
Okay, can we cast then? Can we cast Hugo Weaving as
Elrond?
Elrond?
That'd be interesting. Like, I would love to see all the elves come back for sure. Like
all the ones that were alive from them? Thank you for the biddies.
Like Galadriel, I would love to see her as well.
Yeah, okay, you know what? I'm cool with this. Suddenly makes sense to bring actors back for it, too.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. It's a big money adaptation, too. Like, let's see. Never mind the COVID-19 panic. We understand that. There's lots of hype. Yes, it's a prequel series taking place in the Second Age. It's a pretty penny. Lord of the Rings trilogy. Apparently, the bidding war against Netflix, the number reported to own the rights to this movie, they bought it for $250 million. So that would make this... That number alone would make this the most expensive TV series ever.
Amazon could afford it.
Yeah, but with fees of casting and crew and rewriting and all that fun stuff, it's estimated that this is going to be about $1 billion.
That's pocket change to Bezos for how much money he might get back on return alone. I think it's worth it for him. Did you hear the weird side topic speaking of Netflix? Did you see that Netflix bought the rights for the Pokemon series?
I did not, actually.
And they have the rights for Pokemon Show now. So,
do they have
the new Pokemon Journey's got to be on there?
Okay, interesting. Good for them. Okay. So yeah, there's that. There's the money that they're spending. It's supposed to be, which is again. So it's been guaranteed 5 seasons. That was something that was in here. I just don't know where I saw it. With the amount of money that's been... More specifically, the book called...
the one about the president?
Yes.
Oh, God.
The book called The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is going to be releasing this year, supposedly.
Why are we doing a prequel series about a evil dictatorish president?
Well, how are we supposed to know how he became the evil dictatorish president?
Yeah, but we're not supposed to sympathize with him.
Yeah, I know. This is going to be like another Joker movie, yeah. My guess... Before I found out this was going to be about the evil president guy, when he was 18, and before he became the genocidal president, I kind of wish it was just more of just regular old Hunger Games. Like, I would have preferred just same old rules as before, like same setup, but different characters and a different story told because they're in a different event with different people.
Yeah. I'd be fine with that.
So, but we're getting this. So if you like the Hunger Games, which a lot of people do, you have a book coming out soon, and you have a movie that might be out within the next 3 years. So yeah, there's that. And the last bit of news, Robert Downey Jr.
Did you scroll down to see how much?
Yes, I did. I'll get there.
Holy shit!
it's been estimated how much money he's made from this, from his Endgame payday. He gets paid 8% of the money from the profits, as well as additional amount. It says here, bigger salary and back-end profits of the producer's credits. The Avengers Endgame made about $700 million in profit. For Downey, who had 8% in back-end points, that translates to about $55 million. Plus, there was an initial base salary of $20 million for just shooting the film. So he made $75 million on Avengers Endgame.
That's some smart negotiating.
And for comparison, Joker, the Joker movie, it made $1 billion. It made $1 billion, but that's $1 billion for the whole movie. And
also, this isn't taking into effect that also how much money Marvel/Disney has made in comic book sales, toys, Funkos, everything that is in line with this shit. Not saying I'm not part of the problem. I am very much the problem. But, god damn. Could you imagine if part of his deal also included toy sales?
I'm just gonna leave that be.
If anyone ever gets into a movie and has the option to negotiate for part of the toy sales, do it. 100% do it.
Like, that's the problem, though, is who owns the toys? Like, imagine joining a Pokemon movie. Doesn't Game Freak own the rights to all the toys?
Yeah, but they help make the movies and stuff like that, so. And Nintendo is an overarching mother to all of that, so. Essentially, you if you get that, like, if that's part of your contract, you get that. Like, any toys associated with the movie, so let's say Ryan Reynolds gets a cut of all the toys that he's not even voicing from it, like just toy sales in general. Mm-hmm. That's huge, because like that will also include cards from it. That'll also include figures, Pokeballs that are Detective Pikachu Pokeballs, stuff like that. Like, no, toys for these movies are huge gains. Like, that is why every Iron Man adaptation has a different suit, because it's a new toy.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm just looking at the time.
Yeah. I'm going to wrap up, because I think this is our longest show.
There's no thinking. There's definite. This is twice the length, almost, of some of our show. This is definitely more than twice the length of our average show. And
yes, without
almost
doubt.
Twice the length of the show.
Yeah, I think Endgame was over 3 hours. That's the longest I think we had before this, because just of length of it. I don't think Star Wars went that long.
Yeah, all I know is it's hot in here.
Yeah, same. I need to get my pants off, get some shorts on.
My shirt's sticking to my chest. I'm just kidding. So, yep, if you liked what you saw, hit the like button, the bell button, the subscribe button, the button,
next month.
Next month's movies. So, by the way, we decided that, like, I didn't want to dive into another deep nerd culture film type thing.
No.
Don't get me wrong.
Like this.
I'm going to be sad next week, because I'm already thinking about it. Like, I don't want to move off of Lord of the Rings movies, because Lord of the Rings, oddly enough, has a lot of influence on me, even though it may not sound like it compared to you.
No.
But, like...
No, but I also know you're a huge fantasy nerd, and this is the fantasy nerd.
Yes! So, like, now that I know I won't be watching these again for a little while, it's like, oh, I want to watch these again. Like, there's just something... And mainly, I think, honestly, what it has to do is the music. The music is the best part of the whole franchise, by far.
Oh, yeah, no. If you didn't notice, I didn't complain once about the music during this episode.
Yeah.
The music's fantastic.
So, yeah.
Well, we are moving on to something else.
Yeah. So,
sort of, with fantastic music. Actually, all three of these should have fantastic music.
Yeah, exactly. So, we wanted to stick to themes, but we didn't want to go deep dive into cultures again. So, this time, next month's theme, Harrison Ford month.
Harrison Ford month.
Yeah, so...
We haven't done a person month in a long time.
Mm-hmm. So, next month, we're probably going to discuss at least one of the original Star Wars movies. And then we're
or
just
just Star Wars in general.
Yeah, and then we're just going to talk Star Wars in general. Just what Star Wars means to us. A different kind of critically casual podcast where we're not actually reviewing a movie, but talking about what movies mean to us and what they could possibly mean to others. So there's that. Then the weeks after that, we will be diving into Indiana Jones movies. So 1, 2, 3, and Kingdom of the Lost Crystal.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Temple of Doom, and the Last Crusade, and then Kingdom of the Crystal
Skull. And then we'll end it all with
Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049.
I was about to say Cyberpunk 2077.
This is why I have them wrote out before the show. I have this plan. That's why we always have the month. That's why I always write the month down on our little sheet here.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's our plans for next month. So if you feel like joining us for some Harrison Ford goodness, join us. And then the hopes is if we're still locked up after this month, we can do another like person month, and then we can get into a little bit more of the abstract movies. Maybe the less known famous ones of those actors. That's my hope.
Maybe. We'll see.
So, alright. So that being said, now we're done here. Do all the likes and the Twitter. Join us on Twitter. Join our Discord. Follow us on YouTube.
Do all the dings.
Yeah, I would put all the commands in on chat, but I'm tired and lazy. So.
Same. It's late. We're done. We need to wrap up.
We should just have a command that says outro, and it just puts everything. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate you being here, and until next time, we will see you guys with, Star Wars on Star Wars Day, because we're good at holidays.
For the first time ever. Hey, it's a holiday that matters to us.
Exactly.
Bye.
Stay out of my Hobbit hole.
Okay, fine. Fuck you.